that Vice President Garcia and Secretary Bose are on.
Okay, you're on, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Okay, welcome to the Santa Fe Public Schools Board of Education. This is a regular board meeting. It is February 8th at 5:33 p.m. And we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. We currently have, we'll go ahead and do a roll call just to make it official. Vice President Garcia.
Yes, Madam President here.
Secretary Bose.
Present.
And Dr. Gonzalez is going to be a few minutes late. And do we have Board Member Price?
Not yet, but I do believe she's joining us, Madam President. Oops. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. We will begin as ever with the Pledge of Allegiance and the salute to the New Mexico flag in English and in Spanish. Anybody feeling inspired to lead us in those?
I'll help as needed.
I'm happy to do the English versions.
Okay, marvelous. Board Member Bose, please, or Secretary Bose, please go ahead.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Juro fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos.
I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the Zia symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
Saludo la bandera del Estado de Nuevo México, el simbología de amistad perfecta entre culturas unidas.
Thank you very much. And the acknowledgement of tribal land. I'll go ahead.
We acknowledge the original people of the land, Pueblo people. Oh, do you want me to finish?
Yeah, please continue.
Sorry. The Tesuque Pueblo people and other tribal nations, and ask them to walk with us today as we share and learn together.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 1D, approval of the agenda. Dr. Garcia, any need for changes?
Madam President, no, I think it looks fine as it is.
Okay, thank you. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Madam President, this is Rui. Motion to approve the agenda.
I will second that.
Thank you. Motion by Vice President Garcia, second by Secretary Bose. We'll go ahead and do a roll call vote on the approval of the agenda. Vice President Garcia?
Yes, thank you.
Secretary Bose?
Yes.
Thank you. And the president votes yes. We have approved the agenda. Moving on to Roman numeral 2 on the agenda, introduction of interpreter. Dr. Garcia.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Para servicio de traducción en español, marque 701-802-5152, número de acceso 4277-932#. Por favor, mantenga su teléfono en silencio durante la traducción. Gracias.
Thank you very much. And now Roman numeral 3, our school board showcase, beginning with item A, the Capitol High School Orchestra. Dr. Garcia.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I'm going to turn this over to our music coordinator, April Pickrell.
Hello, good evening. Luca Buckley, Jr. at Capitol High School, is the first student in the CHS Orchestra program to earn a position in the New Mexico All-State Orchestra. He was featured in the Albuquerque Journal, where he mentions how hard he worked to learn the music and compete with others across the state. Zach McGee, who has served Santa Fe Public Schools for 5 years as the Capitol High School Orchestra Director, spent hours of extra time coaching him on the specific details about the music. Luca also described how playing music helps him with stress and building friendships. Luca said in the article, quote, "In orchestra, I've formed really strong friendships, and I've been able to inspire others to give it their best and try as hard as they can. It's a really good feeling that I'm able to inspire people to try and give it their all." Please enjoy this performance by Luca Buckley. One more time. I hope you enjoyed that performance. Thank you very much for having us on tonight.
That was wonderful. Thank you very much, Ms. Pickerel. Moving on, I believe, in the school board showcase to item B, the Carlos Gilbert Elementary 5th grade band, Patience and Perseverance, learning an instrument online. No kidding.
Well, hi there. So I guess I'll just start. Debbie, did you want to talk first? Sorry, Ms. Rael.
I was on mute. Thank you. President Noble, members of the board, and Superintendent Garcia, I'm happy to introduce Kimberly Petroci, principal at Carlos Gilbert Elementary School. We're going to continue with the theme of music in our presentation on the onset of the board meeting. And Kim, you want to introduce your team and the students with you this evening?
I sure will. But thank you, Ms. Rael. Good evening, Board President Noble, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Garcia. I'm Kim Petroci, the principal of Carlos Gilbert. Tonight, we wanted to showcase the patience and perseverance our fifth grade band members have shown by learning an instrument completely online. At this time, I would like to introduce our amazing music and band teacher, Miss Kachina Walker.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having us. As Ms. Petroci said, these are a few of our students from fifth grade band, which is where we start learning band instruments. At Carlos Gilbert, we start in fifth grade, and in a normal year, all of the fifth grade students would get to try out all of the instruments in sort of a succession in a wheel. And they would get to try them out, actually play them, decide if they want to play them or not play them. And we kind of skipped that whole process this year. And about 18 fifth graders decided that they wanted to play a band instrument. And so with a very short, crash course in how to put their instrument together at a grab and go, I showed them how to put it together, and the rest of it was all online, which has been quite challenging as a teacher, but also very rewarding, also challenging for the students and very rewarding. So I'm going to share with you 4 students solos from our little December solo showcase. So you'll hear some holiday tunes here in February, but they have also progressed past these videos, and then we're going to hear from each of those students about their challenges and successes with learning an instrument completely online. Okay. I'm hoping that I can share this correctly. Sorry.
We see you. Yes, it all seems to be
good.
working.
Okay, so let me just try to make this a little bigger. There we go. Okay.
Hi, I'm Aisha, and I'm going to be playing Jingle Bells on the clarinet.
Now, did you get that, President Noble? Hello?
I hear you, Ms. Price. Yes, I do. We're listening to a video.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
No worries.
Hi, my name is Ethan.
Sorry, but I'm not hearing the meeting.
It's a little bit low on volume right now, Ms. Price.
Okay, but I am part of the meeting, correct?
You are, and if you can hear me, I think you're hearing the meeting.
Okay, I can hear you.
Madam President, none of us could hear the performances.
I can.
I can't. Josh just texted me. He couldn't. So I don't know.
I am Finn.
Madam President, this is Rudy. I cannot hear as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
That seems
Neither can I,
that's
for the record.
interesting, as I can hear it.
I can't hear it either.
Maybe, Ms. Walker, if you can try boosting the volume.
Yeah, I'm pretty much as loud as I can go, I think. I don't really, now I really pushed something. I don't know what I did
Can
now.
everybody hear Ms. Walker when she speaks?
Yes, I was hearing everything,
Okay.
President Price.
Let me,
May I make a suggestion? I'm not quite sure, but it's always just to make sure, just to check real quick. Ms. Walker, just make sure you don't mute your mic when you do
Right.
the video.
yeah, I am staying unmuted.
Okay,
So
okay.
I think maybe it's, I
And
don't
it
know.
was a
might
little
just be
bit
quiet.
intermittent on sound just then with a young a boy playing the flute.
Yeah, and that is always a little bit tricky. Let me try to continue and see if we can hear it a little bit more.
Hi, I'm Finn. I'll be playing Jingle Bells on trumpet.
So glad I can hear.
Mentalist.
While we're waiting, is the superintendent there?
Ms. Price, I'm on.
Right. Sorry.
Excuse me?
I'm gonna just for I know there's a lot of people I can't hear, so sorry about that. If you do want to watch all those videos, I just put the link in the chat box, so I'm sorry that it didn't work live for some of you. But I would like to hear from my students. So my students are gonna talk like really super short about their successes and challenges with learning an instrument. So starting with Aisha Dockley.
Hi. My successes in online learning a music instrument is getting to learn an instrument, because even though it's hard to do it online, the success of getting to learn an instrument is great. And the harder part is probably the positioning and wondering if my reed is wet enough, because on my clarinet, I don't know if I have right positioning, and it's harder to see that online. So yeah.
Thanks, Aisha. All right.
Thank you.
Natra.
Hi, my name is Natra. I think my challenges are getting the positioning right and getting the right notes, because I don't know what's the difference. And my success is learning an instrument, because I was really looking forward to it last year, and I still get to learn it even though through these challenges.
Awesome. Thanks, Nitra. All right,
Thank
Ethan.
you.
Uh-oh, Ethan, we can't hear you. It might be the headphones.
Maybe unplug and just talk into the
Yeah.
computer, because I can see you're unmuted.
Yeah. I still can't hear you, sweetie.
My challenge was being able to know if I was playing the right notes or if I was holding down the right keys. The success was being able to learn an instrument because it's really fun.
Awesome. Thank you, Ethan. All right, and we're finishing
Thank
off
you.
with Ben.
A challenge is the internet, because on Wednesdays I go to my grandma's house and my computer doesn't like connecting to her internet, so I have to run off her hotspot. And my computer sometimes just refuses to connect to it. But a success is if I sound like a dying elephant, I can just mute and no one can hear me.
Thank you. Thank you, Carlos Gilbert students, and thank you, board members, for having us. I did put that link in the chat, so hopefully you can watch it at some point of their solos. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all for that. That was a new one. The challenge is the internet. I think Finn is exactly right, because apparently half of us could hear and half of us couldn't on the video there. That's never happened before, and is a little harder to troubleshoot when it's not a unique problem. But thank you, Aisha and Netra and Finn and Ethan, for being here. We really appreciate it, and thank you, Ms. Walker and Ms. Petracci. Really good to see you. That was wonderful, and we'll check it out on the link, because then we'll all be able to turn up our own volume and hear it as best we can. But that's good stuff.
Madam President.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Bose.
I just wanted to say I'm also the parent of a 5th grader who is rotating. At my child's school, they do a quarter of orchestra and then a quarter of band. So he went from the cello to now the trombone. And his band teacher emailed the parents last week and said, these kids are doing phenomenal. I'd be happy to have any of them in the band next year. And I thought, well, that's super cool. And I wrote back to him and said, this is really a testament to your passion and your skills that you can teach music instruments to kids who have never touched these instruments before. They're not getting any in-person instruction. And it's incredible to watch it happen in my own living room. So kudos to all of the band teachers in our district and the music teachers. Their passion is evident, and our students are certainly benefiting from that. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you for having us. Thank you so much.
Thanks again. Thanks for being here. And I was remiss right before introducing Carlos Gilbert to not note that Dr. Gonzalez had joined us, and of course, Ms. Price also joined us. So we now have a full board, and I believe it was right around 5:40. I'm sure for the sake of the minutes, they can both let us know when they got on, but it was right around then that I believe we were joined by both Ms. Price and Dr. Gonzalez. So thank you.
Madam President, if I may, this is Rudy.
Yes, go ahead.
I would just also like to give thank you to the individuals that actually play in the band, because back in many years ago, I used to play the trumpet, and bands back in the days were very, very large. And to the individual teachers that actually teach band, because band is just like, well, there's football, golf, volleyball. It's just as important as any other activity that we do and we deal with. And I just wanted to thank everybody that's involved in that, because playing an instrument is very hard. And I just want to say thank you all for everybody that participates in that, especially the students. The clarinet, the flute, the Secretary Bose, her, I think it's her son. Very good, because that's a hard little instrument to play. But thank you, Madam President.
And did you say the trumpet was yours?
Yes.
Okay, so I was having.
Well, the trumpet was mine, but I didn't. Yes, I tried to play a trumpet.
I was having flashbacks to when I learned to play the clarinet, and it was all of those things, and keeping the reed wet, and I remember it very, very well. It took me right back, and it is great work. And of course, there's a lot of, there's been an article circulating on social media recently saying if you want intelligent students, what you need to teach is music. So all of you who are learning music are probably already getting ahead. So well done, and thank you for teaching them and making this all possible. To you all at Carlos Gilbert and Miss Rael, and yes, Dr. Garcia,
Yeah,
who's
Madam
been
President.
silently applauding, but hasn't
I've
said
been
a word
silently
yet.
applauding. Madam President, members of the board, I just find it phenomenal that the students were able to play as well. And all the students that are learning band for the first time really talks about the caliber of our teachers and their creativity to be able to teach something that I think is very hard, as a student said, to not have someone really look at the positioning, or is your reed wet, or all of those variables. I'm just blown away that they, I mean, we've seen it throughout the year, right? All the students that have been coming to perform and present to us, but for students that are learning to play a musical instrument for the first time and have learned to do it remotely, really takes a lot and speaks volumes of what wonderful teacher you have and what wonderful teachers we have in the Santa Fe Public Schools. So my hat's off to all of you. Thank you.
Good stuff. Well done. And thank you all for all the hard work. Okay, moving on our agenda, we're now at Roman numeral 4. We have the union update, and I believe we have Ms. Mayer, the president of NEA Santa Fe, with us. Welcome, Ms. Mayer.
Thank you. Good evening. I wanted to give a shout out to Ms. Walker and her students from Carlos Gilbert, and just say it was really great to see you guys perform, and then also use technology with the Flipgrid to submit your work. And that's even a difficult challenge in working remotely. So this was a really good example for the public and for everybody on this meeting of what teaching and learning looks like in a remote setting. So thank you guys for sharing that and being here in person to participate. And Finn, I love your sense of humor. So to give my update, I want to start by saying that NEA Santa Fe understands that the best place for our students are in our public schools with their teachers and their peers. Safety of students and staff has been our priority. We have worked in collaboration with the district since last March throughout this difficult process to ensure a safe re-entry to in-person learning. These plans have been approved by the New Mexico Public Education Department. Employees are eager to return to in-person teaching and learning when all safety measures and protocols are in place, and when employees who choose to be vaccinated receive the vaccine. We support efforts to reopen school facilities safely in various voluntary hybrid models that the district will present this evening. Individual school sites will be able to select and modify models to best suit their school community needs. The New Mexico Public Employees Bargaining Act, or PEBA, allows under state law certain rights to collective bargaining locals, such as the National Education Association of Santa Fe, to negotiate salaries and working conditions of employees. We negotiate any changes in those terms and conditions of employment. This past 2 years have brought many such changes. Since March of last school year, NEA Santa Fe and the Santa Fe Public School District have negotiated and mutually agreed to changes that culminated in the application for reentry plan that was submitted to the PED and subsequently approved. We've also bargained remote learning requests for health reasons from staff as agreed to by the PED and outlined by them in certain specifications. MOUs were also developed and agreed to that had to do with changes in duties and working conditions for our transportation employees, our nutrition workers, and recently with our nurses. There has been MOUs regarding safety measures that have been outlined and approved by the PED and the governor as well. We've put together a joint letter to the New Mexico Department of Health and the New Mexico Public Education Department requesting the prioritization of education staff for the vaccine. The voluntary hybrid reentry plan that was approved is now being expanded to include secondary schools. When Governor Lujan Grisham announced in her State of the State address that New Mexico children will be welcomed back to the classroom February 8th, she also stated, quote, "And I will say clearly, none of you, no educator, no school worker, should ever have to choose between your health and the students you serve," end quote. This statement confirms that the governor is in agreement with NEA Santa Fe and the Santa Fe Public Schools that educators and staff should be able to choose when we return to in-person teaching and learning. NEA Santa Fe has been clear with the district that educators will return to the classrooms when we are vaccinated. Some of our colleagues may choose to return prior to vaccination. We support their decision to do so. It is with much gratitude that we thank our parents, guardians, volunteers, community partners who have stepped up and together provided remote learning opportunities, hands-on curriculum, learning materials such as books, art materials, and provided, for our students of Santa Fe. Some of that has been in the form of tutoring services as well, and we're really appreciative of those efforts, and our students have benefited from them greatly. We understand that our community has to come together in Santa Fe to open our schools safely, and we are committed to working with everyone in our community, our district, and our parents and students to honor their choices of returning to a voluntary hybrid model.
That's the end of your remarks, Ms. Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Okay, we are moving along. Pulling up my agenda again. We are now at Roman numeral 5, public forum, and I'm reasonably sure we have quite a few emails for public forum tonight. I would just say to start off with that I appreciate everyone that has reached out. There have been a lot of passionate emails, and it's really kind of an extension of the blessing and curse that this year has been, in that we have increased engagement and a lot of passion in what people are communicating about how things should go and reopening. And we will be discussing this. We have just after public forum on the agenda, the presentation for the return to school plans in the different hybrid models that Ms. Mayer mentioned. Dr. Garcia and her team will be going through that in detail. So I hope everyone will stay tuned in for that piece. And we have worked to set a strike a compromise in that we didn't want to limit any of the public discussion. We do know that some letters have been sent around, and many of the emails we've received are repeats. So our approach tonight is going to be to read the letters that have come in more than once in their entirety, and then note the other folks that have sent them in. And this is in part because we are trying to, of course, honor everyone who has sent emails in, as well as use the time in this meeting as well as we can. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Garcia. And anything else you want to say before we get started on public forum, Dr. Garcia?
Madam President, if I may, this is Rudy.
Of course. Yes, go ahead, Vice President Garcia.
Just really quick, I just wanted to thank all the policymakers and everybody that's been involved in speaking up for public forum, because this is a nationwide challenge that we actually have in the entire school districts throughout the nation. And it's just something that's challenging for us because it's just different. We have a whole different world these days and a whole different nation. And this is something that us policymakers actually take it dear to our heart. And I just want to let everybody out there know that we're going to do what we feel we need to do. Tonight is actually a plan and what is coming forward. And once again, this is a very good community, as Grace said, and we appreciate that. And once again, for all the individuals that are working with us, thank you for being there with us, because it's challenging. And I just want to say that. And thank you, everybody, for being involved. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Vice President Garcia. Dr. Garcia.
Yes, thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Mr. Donarski will go over the rules for public forum. And Mr. Donarski, can you please, just so the board has some context, how many, and I think somebody may be helping him read tonight, it's depending on the volume. How many people have signed up for or submitted email?
Board President, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia, there are 37 people signed up for public comment tonight. Rules for public forum. Please listen and speak with respect. No uncivil conduct will be permitted. Please do not discuss any specific student who is not your own. No sharing of time. Self-monitor and observe the 3-minute time limit. I will give you a 30-second warning when your time is almost up. Public commentary and dialogue is allowed only during public forum, not throughout the meeting. Please search for answers on common ground. You may speak on any topic, whether it's on the agenda or not. Your input will be taken into consideration. Please be advised the board may discuss your issue during the meeting, but by law, the board cannot take action on items that are not on the agenda. Please do not discuss employee matters which may result in disciplinary action. Instead, notify the employee supervisor, the Human Resources Department, or the superintendent. First up is Rebecca Scott Gonzalez. Beyond the potential for greater spread of infection, the educational benefits of the hybrid model seem marginal at best. The hybrid model raises even further the amount of staff teachers are juggling. To begin with, hybrid schedules don't really solve one of the pandemic's biggest problems for parents, the lack of childcare. While having kids in school a few days a week or a few hours a day might give parents a bit more flexibility to do their jobs, the benefits of being able to work a little less part-time and a little less erratically are not going to be anything like what you'd be getting from full-time school. The full-time school is not a possibility right now. There is no getting back the normalcy in the hybrid model. Students and adults are socially distanced at all times. Desks are facing the same direction in rows. Masks are worn at all times except when eating. Eating is also socially distanced, as is recess. Students have more freedom in a remote setting. On top of all the personal protective equipment, distancing, and hand sanitizer, we should remember that prevention is best. The less the virus gets into schools, the less damage it can do in them. Hybrid reopening plans risk opening the door for it. Instead of cycling students through school and ad hoc childcare solutions, we should be looking at improving what is already in place and waiting until it is safer to open schools for all. Next is Allison Monson. There are many families that I have talked to that have indicated if there is no plan in place to go back by the fall, they will either unenroll their child and homeschool or move to another state where the in-person education is being accomplished. I think there are many families Santa Fe would like to know if there is a plan. It seems that there should have been a plan going back in August 2020, but we still seem to be waiting for direction. I believe that it is reasonable for families to see the number of kids that have one or more failing grades, how many kids have moved to other states, and how many kids have been taken out of school. It has been stated that a great many teachers want to receive the vaccine. If they receive the vaccine, is there any hurdle that is standing in the way of going back to school? Is the union requiring that every teacher both receive both doses before returning? Why is the district just now applying for their pharmacy license to administer the vaccine? It has been touted that many other school districts around the nation have reached out to SFPS in regards to our digital education platform. I'm curious if we're doing the same and reaching out to school districts that have been successfully in person since August. The requirements of keeping kids safe while in school should be a universal goal regardless of the state. Why did they change the online platform halfway through the school year? In a letter received from Dr. Garcia in December, she stated that please rest assured that we have in place transmission mitigation processes and there's no lack of PPE. Why does it seem that we are still trying to figure things out when we have had nearly a year to get everything in place for children to return to school? And it was assumed that the letter that we were ready for children to return. I have seen firsthand COVID patients throughout this entire pandemic. It has only been recent that we have been required to wear a N95 mask for each and every patient. For about 9 months, I was wearing a simple surgical paper mask and eye protection, either goggles or a face shield, for all of my patients. I've done my job willingly and gone to work each and every day knowing that I would come face to face with someone who had been exposed to COVID-19 or had a known infection. Our teachers will have every safety protocol in place upon returning to work. We understand the virus better. We have countless studies that point the fact that children are not the point of infection that we need to be concerned with. In my own workplace, the greatest source of transmission has been the break room when employees have taken off their masks and are eating and talking. We now limit the number and stay far enough apart when eating, and the number of infections coworker to coworker has decreased. I've also seen an alarming increase in new onset anxiety, depression, and suicide attempts in younger kids and teenagers 12 to 19. Teenage violence is rising. I recently saw an email that listed the names of counselors for the high school, but there is nothing that can replace face-to-face interaction with their peers and teachers. These kids are isolated. Many have not seen their friends for an entire year. It is heartbreaking to see not only in my patients, but my own children as well. My kids are typically top in their class, are failing because they do not see the point. When the announcement was made that kids could go back on February 8th, my kids were so excited. It was quickly replaced with, we won't get to go back because teachers won't go back. This should not be us versus them mentality. It should not be the teachers union against the parents administration. I'm hoping that we all, like, that is 3 minutes. This one is coming from Larry Shub. My 6-year-old daughter has no siblings. She has no relatives here in New Mexico. She has very little interaction with children her age since last February. This has been terrible for her development, but understandable considering the COVID pandemic. Online schooling was okay for basic learning, is no replacement for in-person in-school learning. Young children learn a tremendous amount from interacting with other children in a way that cannot be replicated online, not even close. Please consider bringing our youngest back to school ASAP. These years are crucial to our kids' development. Thank you. This one is from Dr. Catherine Zane. SFPS teachers are failing our children and our community. We are in this together, and many others have stepped up to hold the community together. I am heartbroken that so many teachers have not volunteered to return to the classroom. Everyone does not have a teacher's privilege to work from home. Many of us have continued our jobs outside of our homes, wearing masks, taking precautions, and contributing to the community, even as we were unvaccinated. COVID-19 has been in New Mexico for 339 days. The parents of school children have bent under the weight of the pandemic. Schools are safe and children need to be properly educated. Teachers have stayed home long enough. Thank you for your concern in this matter. This one is from Katie Rubin. Our district needs to move forward. We know POC has been disproportionately affected by the pandemic, both by being infected with COVID-19 as well as falling behind in school. Our previous administration let fear instead of science lead the discussion on getting kids back into the classroom. I fully understand POC, our fear in our community about sending their children back to school. It is our duty as a community to let science be the discussion forward, not just on the social media platforms, but on the SFPS website, emails from principals, robocalls from principals, PTA newsletters, equity conversations, and emails from school nurses. If it means the district forms a parent group of healthcare professionals that discusses the importance and safety of getting our kids back to school, I'm more than willing to start one to work with our unions and school board. I know plenty of people in healthcare in the district that feel the same way as me. I am sure if there's a lack of staff to vaccinate because school nurses are overwhelmed, I'm sure we could put together plenty of healthcare professionals to run vaccine clinics. If the district would be willing to form a group of parents that are healthcare providers along with our school nurses to work with the teachers union, I truly believe we could work with families to stress how safe schools would be during this time. Our communities of color really need to believe they matter and their local communities care. If each school had a few designated healthcare professionals along with the school nurse, hold weekly Zoom, Google Meet sessions about how safe it is to bring our kids back, I truly believe we can get our kids and teachers back in the classroom. We can and need to make this happen for all children in the district, county, and state. Would you as a school board and district be willing to create a committee of parents that are healthcare professionals join with our school nurses to do meetings with each and every school in the district to stress the safety and science of reopening our schools? Thank you in advance for listening. Sincerely, a very concerned parent. This one is from Andrea Sayer. Let me reset my timer. Good evening, SFPS board members. I write this note as I am out of state visiting my 2 of 4 children. 3 of my children have, until very recently, attended El Dorado Community School and Santa Fe High. Despite the admirable efforts of online teachers, 2 of my children have struggled quite a bit. Their excitement and happiness surrounding school and learning has completely diminished. For the first time in their lives, they have said they hate school. Even more concerning, grades have dropped despite every effort their parents and teachers have made. And most alarming, one of my children began struggling with feelings of low self-worth and depression. I'm sure you can imagine we felt we had no other option but unenroll our 2 struggling children and move them in with family out of state where they have full day in-person school. The decision was very for my family. Being apart from our children is heartbreaking. I've chosen not to work, but stay home to care for and help my children during this pandemic. Despite the amount of time my husband and I have spent trying to help our children stay engaged and understand their lessons and assignments, they were floundering. I am sad and frustrated and angry that our public schools have failed my children, but also failed me as a parent. In order for my children to attend in-person school, I can't be an in-person mother. Now we spend every other week driving out of state to visit our children. My kids are doing extremely well in spite of the circumstances. They are happy and thriving to be back in school. We plan for them to stay out of state until students can attend in person in Santa Fe. If classrooms reopen, I will bring my children back in a heartbeat. I am hopeful that the district leaders and teachers will make the right decision, follow the science, and let our children come back to school. I look forward to the day my kids can come back home, thrive in Santa Fe schools, and feel the same happiness here that they have been experiencing living elsewhere. If our leaders and teachers decide to ignore science and stay remote, we will be making a permanent change for our family, moving out of our state so our kids can attend in-person school. Thank you for your time. This one is from Liz Sharp. Extensive research and data from across the globe show schools can reopen safely for both students and teachers. According to an American Academy of Pediatrics study, schools can reopen safely without causing larger community spread if proper mitigation measures such as masking, physical distancing, and hand washing are in place. Studies from Europe, the United Kingdom, Norway, Spain, and other countries echo these findings that schools have not seen super spreader events. We all know teachers want to be vaccinated, but many schools have opened safely before the vaccine was even an option. Why are teachers and other essential workers who get a say in the matter? With proper screening, teachers won't be working face-to-face with COVID patients. Maybe a requirement should be made that if a teacher does not get to jump in line to get a vaccine, they must be required to get back in the classroom ASAP. We must not wait until next fall to start moving back to in-person learning. It's time for the teachers union and schools to put students' needs first. Children are not super spreaders of this virus, and New Mexico students deserve better. This one is from Martha Jackson. Yesterday, the director of the CDC said vaccination of teachers is not a prerequisite for safe reopening of schools. The data has shown that with precautions, kids and teachers can be safe from the spread of COVID. We all agree school is the best place for our kids. Let's use this as a starting point. Our teachers are being asked to return to school on a voluntary basis. How do we get more teachers to volunteer? Teachers deserve a safe work environment. The study shows that it is safe. So how do we ensure them the data is true? How can we help them trust their district administrators, principals, and the families they serve? This reminds me of the very human fear of flying in an airplane. It's scary. We've seen plane crashes in movies, and it's realistic and terrifying. But if we look at the data, we see that air travel is pretty safe and far safer than car travel. Car accidents don't make the news precisely because of how common they are. The fear is real and it is human. It is also emotional and is not based in fact. Most of us can look at the data, talk ourselves down, and get on the plane. It's scary at first, but we do it a few times and the fear subsides. Please turn off the news, Facebook, and anybody selling you fear. Turn away from the plane crash stories, fact check, don't give in to the sensationalism. I ask teachers, our teachers union, our district to get the message out. We should not have to force our teachers to go back to school. I hope it doesn't come to that. We should invest time and energy showing them that it's safe. Show them the data in a digestible way. Make it real with experiences from the people they know. Local teachers in early childhood education and private schools and our own very SFPS schools who opened successfully earlier in the year can share their stories. Get the word out. It was scary at first. I thought I might get sick. Weeks passed, then months, and now I see what we're doing is working. It's worth it. Yes, vaccines are coming and teachers should be a high priority. Ideally, teachers would get the vaccine before they return in person. But the truth is that they don't need the vaccine to be safe. I feel SFPS is not weighing the risk of opening schools against the risk of keeping them closed in a way that reflects reality. We accommodate teachers' fears and when their risk from COVID can be mitigated. The challenges kids face from keeping schools closed are not and cannot be mitigated. Kids are committing suicide, experiencing adverse childhood effects, and will be at risk for suicide, drug addiction, mental health issues for the rest of their lives. These kids can't wait for the vaccine. I appreciate the work that you've done in getting some kids back to school. This is a good first step, and I hope we can welcome kids back who need it most, IEP or not. Across the country, communities are falling apart. San Francisco sued its own school district to open. Chicago teachers may strike. A teachers union in Cincinnati sued its district. Its schools rushed to open after a rash of adolescent suicides. Let's not let our district come to this. Let's not wait while we work for teachers to get the vaccine. Let's do what else we can, educate our teachers, reassure them that we care for them, and we'll keep them safe. Let's get back to school. This one is from Michael Schneider. Superintendent Garcia and board members, repeating the voluntary hybrid approach used across this past fall will fail our school community. The experience of nearly 70% of school districts across the country that resumed full-time in-person instruction or conducted a meaningful hybrid program demonstrate that it is safe to return to the classroom following public health guidelines. The data is clear that all kids are safer in school, have a greater chance for academic success, and will be provided COVID safe practices that can be enforced at school and taken home. Teachers and staff can apply these same practices too, as many have navigated their communities during the pandemic. Inaction by this board and superintendent signifies either an unwillingness to accept science and apply common sense to a dire educational crisis or a complete capitalization of governing responsibilities. During the State of the Schools address, SFPS clearly stated and showed the resources in place to comply with PED requirements, and in many different forums, the district has stated we are ready. According to the governor, these requirements address building and work environment safety based on input from district and union leaders. Despite these efforts, NEA leaders insist that teachers be vaccinated prior to returning to the classroom. As a former public employee and union leader, I appreciate advocating for employees, especially during a pandemic. However, these demands cast doubts when words like most or more comfortable are tied to a possible, not imminent return to the classroom. Teacher surveys indicate little interest in extending the school year. The optics of these one-way demands are not palatable as a parent and should not be to you. Yesterday, the CDC director stated vaccine for teachers are not a prerequisite for safe opening. This proclamation, along with numerous others, public health safe return to school recommendation renders the union's conditional vaccine argument moot. The board's proposed resolution to have the state reprioritize teachers in the vaccine distribution is nothing more than a political sideshow and is not needed. It is ironic to hear politicians advocate for local decision-making, then punt when the heavy lifting falls upon them. Continuing to placate the will of the union may be politically expedient, but not good policy and a disservice to students. Overlooked here are other school districts across the country is a lack of recognition of who is most vulnerable to continued inaction. That is the children, kids, and students of our community. Your messaging is quick to point out the challenges for parents and teachers, but ignores the harsh reality that the current approach fails most, if not all students, especially when viewed in a holistic manner. I hear the fear some educators have returning to the classroom. Although I'm empathetic to their concerns, I do not believe decision-making should be driven by fear. Amongst teachers, there are volunteers, those willing to return, but are not going under a voluntary environment. Others that will return if required, and some realizing the teacher, that is 3 minutes. This one is from Mary All. SFPS Board and Superintendent Garcia. I feel I must use some of my valuable limited time to lodge my complaint about this public input process. I've been involved in the public process for 30 years, and limiting the small number of participants that do take the time to commit to the board to a few minutes of input is outdated and ineffective. Further, the current requirement for the public to submit written comments to be read by a dispassionate reader is extremely inequitable. I work with hundreds of public bodies across the country who are truly interested in gathering and responding to public input and have found fair and effective ways to do so even during the pandemic. I would suggest that you educate yourselves in modern public participation process or change your rules and procedures to eliminate public input. I will refer you to the December letter signed by many families within the district. Everything in that letter is still valid input. It is important that we follow the science and reset our actions with the latest findings. The science on the urgent need to return to in-person school is clear and communicated well by national and state experts, including Dr. Scrace and Dr. Fauci. The director of the CDC stated yesterday, vaccination of teachers is not a prerequisite for safe reopening of schools. There are those who hope, there are those who dream, and those who do. SFPS appears to be mirrored in the hope and dream mode. Why we fail to trust in science in Santa Fe will continue to baffle me, but with my limited time, I will leave that to another forum. I've seen twice in the past 2 weeks, the superintendent quoted that she would take stakeholder input from teachers and staff, and the NEA New Mexico president referred to teachers, staff, and the business community as stakeholders in the public education process. Neither mentioned students as stakeholders. Meanwhile, the district moves forward in an anemic voluntary hybrid approach at the expense of their most important yet seemingly increasing invisible stakeholders, the students who are held captive behind their screens. Students and families need truth, honesty, and inclusion in a meaningful process with actions to open our schools. I urge you to be transparent and communicate plans now. Our future in Santa Fe is waiting for you to do so. Stop holding students' families hostage with half-truths and feel-good messages about safety and comfort. Engage in a meaningful process that moves forward, that follows the science, or let families know that you won't. Don't lose sight of what you are meant to do. Create an environment where our children can learn effectively. This one is from Emily Waltz. Dear esteemed SFPS board and Dr. Garcia, we know it is imperative for our kids to return to the classroom. We know thousands of Santa Fe children are falling behind through the cracks and are unaccounted for. We know even before vaccination, transmission of COVID is rare in schools practicing safety protocols. We know the mental health and educational future for our kids hangs in the balance. I know online learning is not working for my kids as they are not engaged, are frustrated, and are experiencing mild depression. I also know that the situation that my kids are in is only the tip of the iceberg in comparison to what other Santa Fe children are experiencing. I have just one question that I sincerely would like an answer. There is more and more data reported by the Atlantic, the Washington Post, and the New York Times that kids returning to classrooms in a safe manner does not spread COVID. In fact, in the Washington Post, the cases in schools that opened were described as scant. Along with the new knowledge and data of safely returning to the classroom even before vaccinations, how does the superintendent, the board, and the union justify pushing teachers ahead in line to get the vaccine while at the same time not requiring them to return to the classroom? This one is from a group, Jackie Camborde, Maribeth Desmore, Kelly Garcia, Jim Kutzko, Katrina Latka, Anna Philpott, Roxanne, and Shane Woodward. I apologize if I said any last names incorrectly. We, the undersigned, are parents with students enrolled at all grade levels in Santa Fe Public Schools. We are writing to voice our support for the resolution before you this evening. We believe that in order for teachers to be safe and have peace of mind in returning to work, that they should be vaccinated before opening schools. To that end, we support moving teachers into the 1B category for vaccinations. Getting our children back to school is of the utmost importance, but so is safety. Our teachers have done an amazing job with virtual learning, and we know they are eager as our children to return to the classroom safely. Please vote yes to move teachers to 1B and allow them to receive the COVID vaccination before returning to school. Many thanks. This one is from Lydia Medina. My name is Lydia Medina. I am a parent of a second grader at Nava Elementary. I, like many other parents, find myself in a dire and desperate situation. My family income has been cut in half since my husband's hours have been reduced at work. I am inches away from being kicked out of school. We both have been taking turns calling in, going in late due to the lack of childcare. I urge to please open up the schools. Give us parents back the right to choose. It should be up to us rather or not whether we send our kids. Give us back the right to provide for our well-being and way of life. We are not going to make it without being able to send our kids back. If we can't work or go to school, we can't make money. My bills have been disconnected. My financial aid has been pulled due to poor attendance. I've resorted to pulling student loans that are crippling my future. My son has missed days of school because I can no longer afford to pay interest. It's not essential for living. I'd rather pay a utility bill or my rent. Please, I beg you, if you're not going to open schools, then find a way to help out those parents in desperate need of childcare. Thank you. This one is from Esteban Moreno. Hello, my name is Esteban. I have 3 small children, 2 of which are part of SFPS. Our families desire to get our kids back to in-person learning with the initially adopted hybrid model. That model seemed to work great. It was simple and promising. Another major point I would like to address is both myself and my wife work in person and full-time. We do not have the luxury of grandparents or a family member to watch our kids while they do remote learning. Our problem is not access to internet. It is the huge financial burden that is placed on our family. This is something that has not been addressed necessarily, but it should be, because there are so many working families who do not have access to a family member and must pay for childcare, and that is easily $1,500 a month for 3 children on the low side. In conclusion, we voice our opinion for the superintendent, the board, and the union. Bring kids back in-person hybrid ASAP. Let's solidify our reentry plan to the PED and show our communities and neighboring states that we have our act together and can provide world-class education. This one is from Andrea Probst. Dear board members, for all of us, there have been adjustments this past year to protect ourselves and others during the pandemic. Today, I write as a parent of 2 students that attend Santa Fe High School and participate in the basketball program. Returning to school in a hybrid model would be great if the teachers that return can be vaccinated prior. My understanding is that teachers at the private schools in Santa Fe have, for the most part, been vaccinated. Sounds like we need to take care of all teachers with the priority for those agreeing to return to school this last quarter. I'd like to address student athletes not being able to participate in sports if their school isn't in a hybrid model first. It's almost an ultimatum being placed on our school board by pressuring parents to agree because of this. So if only some districts return, then only a few will participate. So does that mean state tournaments should be renamed hybrid tournament? I also hope there's some sort of plan for graduation in hybrid or not. Truly, I agree 100% that it is in the best interest of students to return to school, but at what cost? Your continued hard work for our children is appreciated. This one is from Phyllis Roybal. Why does it feel like sports are the reason to open schools and not making sure that teachers are vaccinated first? This one is from Tracy Hoffman. What clinical evidence has prevented our children from returning to school that is different from the vast majority of states that have returned? What has the district done to engage with the governor to increase vaccination supply? How has the district worked with PED on its complete failure to provide clinical support to those children who have been out for a year? This one is from Trevor Tippett. Thank you all for having a board meeting today to keep us informed about school reopenings. I see that the current plan is voluntary for teachers, both to receive the vaccine and to return to school. I have a question about information guiding this policy. Have you made your teachers aware that recent studies report low risk even before teachers have been vaccinated with masking requirements, or it's a quote from an article, with masking requirements and students cohorting, transmission risk within schools appears low, suggesting that schools might be able to safely open with appropriate mitigation efforts in place. Only 23% of school districts are offering online only instruction. This puts us behind most of the rest of the country ready for reopening. The CDC director has recently stated that schools can safely reopen even prior to vaccination. Another quote from an article. There is increasing data to suggest that schools can safely reopen, and that the safe reopening does not suggest that teachers need to be vaccinated. Vaccinations of teachers is not a prerequisite for safely reopening schools. What will the school district do if not enough teachers volunteer to return in person, despite the science now showing that it is safe? This one is from Brett Almond. Will schools be starting transportation on the 22nd as well? This one is for Dorinda Hopper Cosmos. If a person volunteers to teach in hybrid, will they be first in line for the vaccine once it becomes available? This one is from Lisa Morley. To whom it may concern, I am a fifth-year special education teacher in the Santa Fe Public School District. Professionally, there is nothing more important to me than getting back into the classroom to better serve my students. Please provide vaccinations for all public school staff so that we can get back to our school sites and teach in an environment conducive to learning. Staff whom I work with across the district are expressing decreased morale primarily due to the lack of functional or systematic plan for reentry. Make a plan, stick with it, provide vaccines, and get us back on track. Asking for volunteers to return to sites is, in my opinion, ridiculous. If the board is determined to provide quality education for Santa Fe children, get the teachers back. This one is from Stephen Winterstein. I'm a teacher and parent in the district. I taught in person in the fall when we reopened and expect to do so again in a couple weeks. In other words, I'm basically comfortable with the risks involved in returning to school. However, what concerns me now, as it did in the fall, is that there do not seem to be any hard and fast criteria for closing the district once we open. Since there are more contagious variants around us, those criteria should be decided upon and stated publicly in advance of opening. In November, as we saw cases rising sharply, a decision was made to shut down again. That was correct, in my opinion. But as I understand it, it was also arbitrary. The district could have decided to keep schools open at that point. The state has specified that an individual school with a certain number of cases within a certain amount of time would have to close, but I'm referring to the district as a whole. I haven't heard of conditions specified by anyone under which a district should close down again because staying open is no longer safe. Just because the state allows the district to open schools doesn't mean we should. If we reopen, then the responsible thing to do is clarify what would make us close again. This should include, among other things, consideration of transmission rates and serious infection rates locally, and consideration of local hospital capacity. If a student or staff member does get seriously ill, we must be confident that we can receive any necessary medical care. Please go ahead and reopen our schools. There are children and adults ready to accept the risks of doing that, but please also publicly state the limits to the risk you expect us to take. Thank you. This one is from Emily Einstein. Good evening. Oh, let me reset my timer. Good evening, everyone. Albert Einstein published an essay in which he stated that the highest human ideals are the pursuit of truth, kindness, and beauty. These last 4 years have been a testament to what happens when the pursuit of those ideals is abandoned. I wish the district would stop spending time and energy and money on this hybrid thing and start putting those resources into getting the vaccines to our SFPS community. There is no upside to any hybrid model. The whole sports thing has me completely flummoxed. If social distancing needs to be 6 feet or more, then the human body, when exercising, turns into a powerful fog machine. It's just not safe now. So the so-called internet cafe is an intriguing idea and might work in a voluntary faculty staff situation. But then again, this COVID thing is more deadly for Americans than World War II. We have managed to make it this far, sort of. We must wait until the community is vaccinated. The only upside to this whole historical nightmare is vaccines. They are, in my opinion, quite miraculous. I apologize, quite miraculous. The future of this technology is as bright as the sun. Come on, people. How about setting up vaccination stations at each school site and utilizing our incredible nurses? Instead of the internet cafe, we would have vaccination cafe. This would break up our community population into 20 plus sites that are familiar to the faculty, staff, and their age 16 and up household members. It would be much easier to manage administratively. My focus and the focus of the district should be on getting our gloved hands on the vaccines and vaccinating people. The students need to continue to get materials, mainly books and supplies. I'm not alone when I assert that all of the pundits are wrong when they insist that their lives will be ruined forever if they miss a year of school. Well, no, they won't. Their lives will be ruined forever if they are disabled by COVID or spread it to their parents or grandparents, and that, God forbid, results in death. It's already happened. These are not normal times. Students need to know that they are loved and safe, and they need to read. To practice reading, of course, the reading thing is the foundation of all education. If the school district continues to supply books and supplies, food and encouragement, love and consistency, and remote contact as teachers continue to do in these hard times, the students will be fine. They will catch up quickly and grow into healthy, productive citizens. I'm sure everyone is frustrated with the wait, the uncertainty, and the insanity that we've all endured the last 4 years. But now we have an opportunity to begin to put that behind us and organize ourselves so we can approach the future with confidence and continue our pursuit of Einstein's highest human ideals: truth, kindness, and beauty. This one is from Carol Luttrell. Dear members of the board, I would like to present some concerns that I haven't seen publicly addressed in public dialogue about reopening. Even discuss reopening, volunteer or not, before all interested school staff is fully vaccinated with both doses, and the waiting period after makes a mockery of the 10 months that we've spent in remote learning. If remote learning was deemed the safe and responsible option to this point and vaccines are available, how can you, in good conscience, expect school staff to return before being given the opportunity to be fully vaccinated? The educational response to the pandemic has brought all of the inadequacies and inequities of our national public education system and our societal values to priorities into the spotlight, literally into people's living rooms. It has become clear that society has allowed schools to become one and only safety net for children in our communities. This is not okay. Caring for the whole child, physically, mentally, emotionally, and educationally, should not be the sole responsibility of schools. It is time to help rewrite the national education narrative. Instead of focusing on reopening before schools are ready, let's focus on supporting our school communities through the remainder of the school year safely in remote learning, and then spend more time and energy planning and creating a new and better normal that we can safely return to in the fall. Why are sports being tied into this decision? Dangling the carrot of sports participation in front of schools to encourage participation in a rushed reentry program only clarifies our state's educational priorities. Apparently, sports opportunities for our students are considered more important than the health of your school staff members. As a teacher, coach, and parent of student athletes, I understand the value of athletics in school. I do not put that value above all else. I am completely appalled by the NMAA's decision here and than the rather transparent cooperation of the PED and putting sports at the top of our state's reopening priority list. There are some rainbow and unicorn thinking in the community about what hybrid learning looks like on a large scale. We will not be returning to any type of normal. That needs to be made very clear. The state allows 50% capacity, but classroom size and the ability to properly distance within the classroom will actually dictate how many students in any classroom or cohort can return in a single day. So the students will attend school with a small percentage of their classmates or cohort. They will be masked, distanced, and restricted in their movements within the classroom and in the school building. Learning would all still be online as the rest of the cohort joins remotely. The social opportunities in a normal school day will no longer be there. Lunch with friends, passing periods at lockers, group games at recess, small group work, to name a few moments in a pre-pandemic school day will not be happening. Nothing about this in-person instruction will be normal. Next is from Laura Zerolnik. Dr. Garcia and members of the board, let me begin by expressing my gratitude for your continued support of teachers throughout this unprecedented time and for consistently making the health and well-being of all a priority. As we all know, the PED and governor recently announced that schools may open on February 8th. Frankly, I was surprised and even confused by this sudden sense of urgency, given that COVID infections are higher now than last fall, and there are new, more contagious variants. What is the justification for opening schools under worse circumstances? The good news is the vaccines are now available and being administered, though we can't control at the pace at which this is happening. We must be vigilant in upholding our safety protocols. Why would our position on this change now? On another note, I'd like to add that in this distance learning model, my students and I have built a strong and cohesive classroom community where learning and growth are taking place. I take offense to those that claim teaching and learning aren't happening and find it undermines and disregards all the hard work teachers and students have done to meet this challenge. Distance learning is not a new concept, nor is it a subpar solution to a pandemic. It is different. It's not for everyone, but it is legitimate. Furthermore, the hybrid model is not without its own set of challenges. And at this point, I question if that's better. Thank you again for your time and continued support. This one is from Jennifer St. Clair. Superintendent Garcia and members of the board, thank you for the work that you do for our community. As a teacher, I appreciate the volunteer-only policy for hybrid learning. I'd also like to remind folks that remote learning has a significant upside. All grades at my school have shown academic growth this year, and teachers and students are actually learning and having fun every day. Teachers can see into the lives of their children as they share their pets, artwork, favorite toys, and siblings. It really provides a personal touch that strengthens the bond between teachers and students. I feel closer to my students this year, and they feel closer to me as we share our lives and our learning. As always, our students are the antidote to burnout and low morale. At this time, our morale is being torpedoed by the unacceptable vaccine situation. This one is from Davida Ritchie. Dear SFPS School Board, it is absolutely ridiculous that school openings are even being entertained at this moment, at the peak of this massively deadly pandemic with no end in sight. The mere notion of schools reopening is insane. No student or teacher or staff member should have to sacrifice their health, safety, or lives in order to access a great public education. We're doing just fine remotely. Let us explore this new world of education from the safety of our homes where we're not being asked to sacrifice our well-being. To prevent from too much of taking your time, I will focus on what is most important to me, my family. In my circle, I have several at-risk elderly who, if they contracted COVID, will all in likelihood die. 2 of them have signed DNRs and no respirator releases should the care necessary to keep them alive elevates to that point. These people are who I stay home for. These are the people I practice safety and I follow all the WHO and CDC guidelines for. These are the people I protect with my own safety protocols and why I have hardly left my home except for the absolute essentials since last March. To be truly transparent, to protect my loved ones, no matter the decisions made by my superiors, I will not be returning to the classroom or teaching at this time. Please do not ask me to say goodbye to my 11-year-long career and my kids. Please do not ask me to threaten my family's livelihood for the sake of keeping us alive. I truly feel blessed that I have had a job through the pandemic and I can continue serving to the best of my ability my kids. I need 4 things before I consider going back in person anything. Both doses of the Moderna or Pfizer COVID vaccine and a 15-day window after both doses have been received, a large percentage of staff, students, and their families being vaccinated, solid data on the vaccine's effectiveness against the new, more contagious strains of COVID being identified, solid data that information regarding my personal ability, even vaccinated, to contract the disease, may be asymptomatic, and carry it home to my family members and circle. This disease is deadly and can and will destroy my life for 6 months to a year, even longer, before we truly know nothing about this novel virus. It is mutating every day. At this time, I do not know if a vaccine will guarantee I will not carry it to members of my family to destroy or even lose their lives. At this time, the vaccine simply gives me a possibility of survival, and that is not enough for me. I am not at all confident about returning to school this year. Let us stay on the right side of history and respect this pandemic while we reach new heights on cases and deaths. Until we as a country are approaching a New Zealand model where we see a major decline in cases, we have not yet to see a decline at all. A large percentage of our population is vaccinated effectively. That is 3 minutes. This one is from Catherine Bueller. Asking for volunteer teachers is the wrong approach. The superintendent and school board should show leadership by saying we are going back to school in hybrid mode. Those who need a medical waiver have the opportunity of going through that process. There's plenty of evidence now of how to do it right, and we are doing that. They also should have been showing leadership for the last year by researching successful systems, by providing schools and teachers abundant, clear examples, but they haven't. This business of saying we are being virtuous by giving teachers and schools a choice is a deceptive lie to cover a failure to effectively develop and implement a plan. I won't volunteer to go back to the classroom because that just contributes to the chaos. I will go back instantly when the district says that's what the district is doing. This one is from Yolanda Archambault. Madam President, school board members, superintendent, and district staff, I urge you not to consider the hybrid model for high school teachers until all teachers who desire have been vaccinated with both doses. Our student population is out in the community daily working their jobs. With few exceptions, teenagers recover from COVID within 3 to 4 weeks. Unfortunately, most of the students who reported positive COVID results were those who experienced sufficient effects to be aware they were infected. With that being said, some of the teenagers were unable to determine they were positive until a family member became seriously ill. Social distancing for teenagers is easier said than done. Another serious academic flaw is breakout of time with students being in 2 places simultaneously. Although on paper it seems simple, group A is doing this and group B is doing this, unfortunately, this will still require the teacher to take attendance for a split group. Not hard, just time consuming. In attempt to handle 27 plus students in 2 different environments, that will be extremely challenging and stressful. I recommend that the high school population not move into a hybrid environment in the middle of Q3 and Q4, and that we remain in a remote environment. This one is from John St. Peter. I can understand reopening schools if every teacher, every staff member, every student, and parent has been vaccinated. That is not the case for Santa Fe Public Schools. Only a few teachers have been vaccinated. I think the rest of us are confused about the news of reopening. Cases are high, deaths are high, variants of the virus are spreading. And from what I gather from the latest news, the rest of us who were not vaccinated will most likely have to wait until summer. One last thing, kids get sick from the virus too, as we experienced the last time we tried moving into the hybrid model. This one is from Ernest Tafoya. My name is Frank, and I am a high school math teacher in the Santa Fe public school system. I've been teaching high school math in the Santa Fe area for 45 years. I'm a retired NM public school teacher that is on the return to work status because I love what I do and I love working with young people. I am 69 years old. I have high blood pressure and high cholesterol that my doctor says could lead to heart disease. I registered for COVID-19 vaccine, but have not been scheduled. My principal informs us that there's a possible tentative return to in-person school on February 28th. I do not see how that can be a safe situation if most of the employees in the SFPS district have not received one vaccine, much less the 2 vaccines. I will not, and I'm sure dozens of other teachers my age will not, return to classroom under these life-threatening circumstances. Teachers are dying from COVID all over the country. This week alone, 3 teachers died from COVID in Georgia, and they were all under the age of 40. My girlfriend has asthma and her mom is 87 years old. I cannot risk carrying the COVID vaccine or virus to them. The custodians at our schools are so overwhelmed with their responsibilities that oftentimes they don't get around to cleaning all the classrooms or emptying our waste baskets. Now we are going to give them the extra responsibility of disinfecting the classrooms and the school in general. What if the school doesn't get done properly? Also, how do we keep hundreds of high school students socially distanced in the hallways between classes or during their lunch period? These are concerns brought up by students themselves. Why can't we wait until every single SFPS employee has had both vaccinations and the positivity rate of spread in our county is extremely low? This one is from Sherry Cross. Thank you, members of the school board, for letting us voice our concerns. Below are my concerns regarding return to hybrid or any in-person model before receiving our vaccines. 100 staff members were vaccinated by the district. Isn't it inequitable to have us go back before the rest of us are vaccinated? This seems like the potential to open up the district to a lawsuit. The new variant is not factored into any of the existing data, saying that schools can relatively control the spread. Experts are saying it is much more contagious, so we don't know if our measures will work with this new variant. The new variant is also potentially more deadly. We don't know how it affects children. This seems irresponsible to go back and risk lives when we are so very close to a vaccine for our staff. We have come this far and sacrificed so much since March. To come back before vaccinated feels like we would be throwing it all away. If anyone, staff, student, or family member dies because of this, all the sacrifice we've done this far will be for nothing. Thank you. This is from Jennifer Warren. Dear SFPS board members, thank you for your service on the SFPS school board. I am writing because I heard this from our governor yesterday. We will be getting this right. We will move forward, and every district in the state will be able to welcome all ages and students safely back to the classroom on February 8th. We teachers are wondering many things. First and foremost, what changed? Our numbers, at least in the district, aren't going down. We haven't been vaccinated, and my classroom looks like it did months ago. Nothing feels any safer than it did last fall, so why set an unrealistic date? I can tell you that hearing all about the trips and socializing my students are doing while I am not going anywhere makes the prospect of being in a small classroom with my students feel very unsafe. Only when the school board and the legislature go back to in-person should we consider opening up the classrooms. This one is from Tanya Varela. I just have some questions and concerns. So since we are still considered a red county and the cases numbers, death numbers are still significant, the same or more in the fall, what has changed in regards to returning in such a fast response? Santa Fe teachers, or at least those that I know, have not received their vaccinations. So tell me, since we were waiting on vaccinations and none of us have received them, why are you so rushed to return us so quickly? If we have not received the vaccinations, are we going to have the option of teaching remotely until we have the opportunity to receive both vaccinations? I mean, since the beginning of this mess, you have all stated that the biggest priority is safety. I think it is safe to say that if we are forced to return without the opportunity of vaccinations, then you are not putting our safety first. This one is from Colleen Cohnman. Good afternoon. The governor's announcement yesterday has caused anxiety and frustration for teachers, myself included, and students alike. I do not believe anyone will be safe going back to in-person school until teachers are fully and completely vaccinated. I am confused at how the state can now safely reopen schools when, one, we have not been successful in vaccinating those in the first A1 category, and two, counties are still in the red zone. I have been supportive of the governor's past statements, but I cannot be in favor of what I believe to be a rushed decision making without forethought of where the state is with vaccinations and how to systematically vaccinate school staff, both vaccinations, so that all staff who request the vaccine can and will be vaccinated. Therefore, my preference is to remain teaching remotely until all above is worked out. Thank you for your time. This one comes from Javier Romero Sandoval. The 12th graders should be the ones to go back. It is our last year of high school. Kindergartners go back later. They have a whole 12 years to go. We are the ones that are hurting because it is our last year of school before we all move in different ways. That is why we should go back, and the priority before all other grade levels. And the last public forum comment for tonight is from Daisy Pena. My name is Daisy Pena, and the reason I am emailing is to vote against going back to school on February 22nd. Being online school has helped me focus so much more on my classes, therefore help me have better grades throughout the current semesters, and I don't have to worry about putting my parents at risk. And that is it for public forum for tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Janarski. As ever, I find you to be an excellent reader and appreciate the marathon that it is when we have very many comments. So thank you again. And just as a point of privilege before we move on, I want to thank everyone once again who emails. We do appreciate the engagement from folks, and I especially want to thank those who are kind and productive in their comments, because that is what we need now. And a lot of people shared some very personal details. And that is always valuable to understand the complexity of people's individual situations. It's really difficult, and I don't find it particularly productive. I know everybody's stretched. Pandemic fatigue is real. Parents are suffering. Students, there is no question, this is not how schools were designed and are suffering. But to not appreciate and understand that we are in this together and that we need to work together and be a community, to simply cast blame and insults is not at all productive. So again, I just appreciate those who were productive in their comments. And one more thing just to say, there were a couple things about childcare in there. And because that is my day job, I would encourage anyone, and maybe we can even respond to those who brought up the issue, because we do have resources to help folks who are under 200% of the federal poverty level in New Mexico, which is sometimes a little bit complicated to establish because it depends on the size of your household. But we do have resources to cover childcare. And you can just Google Early Childhood New Mexico or Childcare New Mexico and get to the Early Childhood Education and Care Department website, which includes a tab called Am I Eligible? That actually takes you through a pretty simple set of questions to determine what services and supports you might be eligible for in New Mexico, which includes childcare, and parent co-pays have been waived during the pandemic. The attendance requirements have been reduced. There's been a lot of good supports put in place because our folks at the state level and in the early childhood department have recognized how stretched people are, especially those who have to work in person and are struggling with kids at home. So with that, we can move on the agenda to our presentation tonight, which is item 6, our presentation on SFPS hybrid reentry. And I know, and one more thing, I know I said that was the last thing, but I do also want to say that many of us board members are reading lots of information. It's hard to keep up with all of it. I appreciate that. But there were a lot of misunderstandings in some of those public comments. So I appreciate how hard it is to keep up on all the things, but I really do hope folks will pay close attention to this presentation, because Dr. Garcia has been hearing a lot of the miscommunications and misinformation, and I know will do her very best, as will all of the team members, to make sure that the information is clear and that we all understand where we are. Two immediate ones: we are not in charge of vaccines, and how things are prioritized. That is up to the Department of Health and not the Santa Fe Public Schools. And the problem is not that we have delivery mechanisms for vaccines. The problem is supply. We don't have enough vaccines. So just to be clear on a couple things. Anyway, I know we will all learn a lot from this presentation. So Dr. Garcia, the presentation.
Thank you so much, Madam President, members of the board, for clarifying some of those points that we heard in public forum. And most of this will be addressed in the presentation, but I do want to highlight a few things for those I hope that wrote letters that they're still watching, is my fondest hope, or that people will watch this a piece of the presentation tonight. But I want to clarify something that our union president, Grace Mayer, said, and I don't think people understand the history and the trade-offs and the negotiations that happen at the legislative level when we got collective bargaining in the state. Collective bargaining has to do with the relationship between management and labor. And there are several unions. NEA is one of them, but this applies to the education groups, NEA and the American Federation of Teachers. You often hear in other states where teachers go on strike, right? We've heard that happen in neighboring states. Our unions gave up the right to strike, and in turn, they got collective bargaining, which gives them the right to negotiate the terms and conditions of employment, as Ms. Mayer clearly stated. Our Board of Education has always supported collective bargaining, as do I. We honor it. Ms. Sink has been our head negotiator, working with me and our team to represent the district, and Grace Mayer and her team represent NEA. And we come to the table and we try to work things out in a fair and equitable manner. It's not to say that we are not opening because we're not prepared, or that we're not opening because we don't have a plan. We've been prepared to open since August in terms of getting our buildings ready and having all the protocols in place. This quick turnaround decision to open was not a district decision, it was a state decision. I also want to make clear that if we were to magically vaccinate everyone, and we could, and I'm also very proud of our faculty and staff, 99% have said they want to get vaccinated, which is much higher than what I've even heard in the medical field or in other fields where people might have vaccination hesitancy. There is a strong commitment to want to get vaccinated. But the state, I don't believe, will even allow people to come back face-to-face, normal schedule, life back to normal. Micro districts, which are districts under 100, under certain conditions, are allowed to bring everyone back. But right now, all districts, vaccinated or not, that choose to open may only open in hybrid. That is not a district decision. The criteria for closing is also set by the state right now, and it is no longer based on the gating criteria that they used to have, if you're red, yellow, green, etc., but more on surveillance testing and the number of positive cases and the amount of time you close for. And so all of that is very different. Transportation will be provided. Again, I want to say we're not figuring it out. We've had it figured out. When we learned about the conditions for opening, we did look at additional models only for the reason to bring back more students, to maximize the number of students we could bring back. Why didn't we open February 8th? There were new conditions for inspections with the fire marshal for the middle and high schools. Those are almost completed. We've been passing them with flying colors. Our buildings are safe. We have communicated that. We have provided videos to staff on that. Our protocols are all in place. We have the PPE we need. What is our biggest impediment is vaccines. And as Ms. Noble said, We can't control the supply. We can't control who gets vaccinated, but we are prepared to vaccinate. We're ready for our own clinic. We did apply for our pharmacy license. We also have a partnership now with St. Vincent's and Albertsons. And so we're ready to rock and roll. It's a matter of supply and prioritization by the state. And so with that said, I would like to go ahead and begin the presentation. And I don't know who's putting it up for us. And I hope it has the notes on the bottom so I know which is my slide. You'll be hearing from a variety of district staff today. And staff may need to help me because I can't see the notes on the presentation to know if it's me or not. So I'm assuming this slide is mine. So as you know, the Public Education Department announced January 6th that we could open February 8th. Actually, it wasn't January 6th. It was later than that, I believe. And I do want to mention that I promised our families and our employees a 2-week notice also so that people could arrange for childcare, which we honored. Schools and students can participate in NMAA athletics if sites are in hybrid learning. And actually, I believe it's the district. It's not site by site. The sports calendar approved by NMAA on February 1st allows for full practices to begin football, cross country, and volleyball on February 22nd. And now we've learned soccer on March 1st. And we have already begun practicing. Why have we decided to go with this voluntary program? First of all, lacking vaccines, right? We're lagging there. Also, let's just say we had everybody vaccinated, we could open tomorrow. We have 300 employees that are on medical accommodations. According to the Department of Health rules, even if they are vaccinated, these individuals must be allowed to retain their accommodation for the rest of the school year. So I couldn't bring back everybody, even if I wanted to. We're lacking the staffing. In some classrooms, because they still require the 6 feet of distancing, we can't accommodate everybody. And so that is another barrier. We can't just go by plain square footage. We have to look at the desks, the teachers' desks, right? Interest centers, bookcases, all that occupy space. Obviously, when it gets warmer, we will be able to use more outside space. And again, NEA's position is that employees need to be vaccinated before returning to school. And again, 90% of our faculty have said that they would do that. And we do honor that concern and that request. Let's go on to the next slide. So we will open on February 22nd for the first time, 6th grade through 12th grade. Well, 6th grade that are in middle schools. We're very excited about that. Students will be prioritized again for space. I think that you'll see a slide on the prioritization a little bit later. PED still requires 50% student cohorts. So to be clear, we're not allowed to bring back all students, only 50%, and they have to be in a cohort. And we are very close to finishing our visitations by the fire marshal. We had a special meeting with the fire marshal and Larry Vigil, who with his Palms associate, the insurer with the New Mexico Public Schools Insurance Authority. And he felt that the Santa Fe Public Schools had gone above and beyond in terms of their approach to safety, and felt like, right, you cannot eliminate all risk, but the Santa Fe Public Schools had done a stellar job in doing all they could to mitigate risk. And I'm very proud of that work by our team. Next slide, Dr. Ryan.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. Happy to go over our plans here. We have been working real hard, and when I say we, not only the schools and the principals, but all of our departments. And we have been showing the schools different models with the idea that we want to respond to the challenges that teachers have expressed and that they face, that we provide flexibility to schools to meet the needs of their personal community, not to try to put something from the district across to everybody, and to maximize the number of students that can return to in-school instruction if those families want their kids to be there. So from that, I'm going to go over some learning models. These are learning models that are well known around the world, that have been proven successful for the academic needs of kids as well as other needs that they have. And blended learning is kind of the middle between that face-to-face school experience and a fully online experience. So in between is a combination, a hybrid, or a blend of those two models. And we've been going over with principals at every level, what are the different types of things that have been done before that can give you some flexibility in the way you do teaching and learning. And this isn't based on COVID or a crisis now. These models were developed by school districts or schools that were trying to meet their individual needs and kind of break free of maybe the more traditional model of education as we know it. The first area is going to be rotation models, and these are things that look, or you could be in a face-to-face school building and not necessarily notice a lot of difference. And then as we get to that enriched virtual model on the right side, these are things that look very much different.
Dr. Ryan, can you advance your slide, or did you want to not advance the slide yet?
I will in 1 second. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, because you were saying on the right side and we don't see it on the right side.
Oh, I was talking about the enriched virtual model, which is a more distance learning application. So I'm going to start with flipped classrooms. A lot of people have heard about the Khan Academy. And a flipped model, the idea originally—
Dr. Ryan, the slides are not progressing. We're still on core values. That's what I meant a while ago, that when you were saying this particular model was on the right side, we're not seeing anything else.
Okay, Larry, maybe my internet has gotten board member Noble's infection and slowed down a little bit. And why don't I stop presenting, and Larry, you're the backup, our contingency plan, and you can present and I'll go through.
Will do. Give me a second.
A backup to the backup.
I don't think it's contagious through the internet, but what do I know?
There's a lot of theories going around.
Clearly, yes, we can create.
Anyway, while he's getting that up, I don't need the visual necessarily. We can proceed. The flipped classroom was, what if the kids received instruction at home as homework, and then when they came into the face-to-face, when they come into the face-to-face class, the teacher works on practice with them. So they've already gotten maybe a little video or an assignment, and Larry, go to slide 6. So they get the direct instruction. That's good. That's good. They get the direct instruction at home, and then they come to school and the teacher works with them on practice, as opposed to getting the direct instruction in the school and then going home and not having someone to help them with that practice that isn't there. Khan Academy is an example of this. It's received tons of awards, and you can go to the WW Khan Academy site to get more information about how this works, but it is basically YouTube presented content that helps and supplements. Our teachers use this across the district. They use it across the country. Next slide, please.
But as Dr. Ryan mentioned, it is not necessarily just because you're in a pandemic or you're in a hybrid learning mode. I want to just reemphasize that many of these models are used under normal conditions as a way to either reinforce instruction, or when students really need a lot of individualized tutoring where the teacher is more a facilitator and a coach. This has proven to be very effective. And Dr. Ryan, were you able to show or talk about Was there a slide previous to this on another model?
I'll go through the rest of the models. There was a slide that showed all of them on one page, but I'll be going through each one of the slides, unless you want me to go back to that.
Why don't you, just so they can see a quick overview? Because I think that was a good slide.
Right here, slide 5. So again, blended is the gap, the area between a full face-to-face experience and an online, and then the rotation models, which will be the first 4 that I show you, aren't as dramatic of a change as, say, the enriched virtual, which is going to be more fully in an online, more dependent upon the online resources than it does the face-to-face. And there are tons of reasons why schools that can't get maybe an AP math course because there's no teacher in that community can bring in this type of resource, or they're having challenges with the number of facilities they have. There's a ton of reasons why these have been successful in the country for the last several years. And if now you go to,
and even in New Mexico, Dr. Ryan, you remember back, even when I was secretary, when we had Ideal New Mexico, that we were offering the enriched virtual model that many rural districts use because they don't have that depth and breadth of teachers with the expertise. So that has been used. And the flipped classroom, as we said, has also been used quite a bit. And so again, I want our families to know that we're just trying to expand these learning models because it will give us more flexibility to bring more students in. But I was calling you Dr. Noble. President Noble, you have talked about how the pandemic has caused us to reinvent ourselves in ways, in an accelerated manner, that there are components of what we're doing now that may have real utility post-COVID, post-pandemic, right? To be able to personalize instruction for students in a way to better meet their needs. Go ahead,
yeah, and so as we talk to our school communities, we're telling them, don't think about the next 3 weeks or even the next 3 months. What are in that re-engineering, redesign model? How could we leverage some of these to really benefit the needs? And as Dr. Garcia said, we helped the state create a model, APS. I was there when we created their model, and I've helped implement this in other states across the country, different to meet the needs of a school. We don't want to take this and say, we're just going to do flipped. We're going to say, what are the challenges we have and what resources can we bring to help support us? To Dr. Garcia's example on using this in New Mexico, I just put up a slide, and the bottom has a link to a 3.5-minute video. The 2 teachers that are standing are working in a bilingual class, and they were finding that some of the kids didn't want to ask questions. They felt embarrassed that kids may think they weren't smart. They also didn't want to stop teaching math because the kids couldn't read English. So what was a tool that they could use? So they used some of their interactive whiteboard, started videoing his presentation. You don't really need to see the teacher presenting, because when a teacher's working with a child, they're looking at either the child's work or what they're writing on a board. So in the Khan Academy type of a model, he recorded all of his lessons in Spanish, put it on YouTube, and it was getting worldwide views as people were looking at it. In fact, some of the kids were saying, you know, teacher, no offense, but I think I like you better online. And the reason is they could stop it, play it back again and again until they started to get some of the concepts, and the resources were available to them at all time. The reason I'm bringing this one up first is because the recording of some direct instructional content provides the teachers an easy way to do what they normally would do in the classroom, to record that. And then while kids are watching it, even in a live class, could be answering questions that are coming up on chat. It's very distracting to be talking and then having these chat things come up and they kind of pull you off. This way you can concentrate on both. Next slide, please. The next model is a station rotation, and this is easiest to when you think about a kindergarten classroom. There's areas in that kindergarten classroom where kids are going to be working on projects with their hands to get math concepts. It might be a reading area, a book area for the kids to look at a reading assignment. There may be another area where a kid's doing some assessments on where they are performance-wise, and the kids are in groups in that class, and the groups will rotate, or the teacher will rotate to the different groups so that the kids in the day get all of the areas, but it's very specific to the needs of the kids. So they call it station rotation. If this was an online class, you could have a teacher that's teaching direct content online and a secondary teacher that's teaching face-to-face, and they combine those two classes and rotate those kids through the online portion and the face-to-face portion. There may even be and some of the research is coming back saying you want to combine the online and face-to-face into some collaborative groups, and that way the kids that are face-to-face can help support some of the things or questions, concerns that the kids have in an online. So station rotation, rotating through on a fixed schedule. Next slide, please. Lab rotation is very similar if you've been to a university where you have your academic portion in a class, and then you go to a lab with a different teacher who might review those things. And this is for language labs. It could be for science labs. Same kind of concept where you might have the academic work being presented in the online format or in the online part of the week, and the lab activity or the hands-on activity is being done in the face-to-face. You could have several different teachers that are teaching online, and then the lab environment is reinforcing those skills that were taught in that face-to-face environment. Next slide, please. Individual rotation, this is starting you would have a large area, a large computer lab. It could be in a library, it could be in a cafeteria, it could be in a lecture hall where you've got a number of labs, desks with computers set up. And there could be off to sides, like in a library, you have little rooms that direct small group instruction, intervention, RTI, larger group project. And this would be something where the students, this could be, think of this as an algebra class with 5 classes of kids in here. And you have teachers providing direct instruction for algebra, trigonometry, geometry, all of the math subjects, with math teachers in the face-to-face class to be providing pull-out work or answering questions with kids. You would use EAs to help make sure that kids are online, they're not having computer problems, they're getting into the network, they're not lost in their work, and the teachers are now focused directly on how do I help the kids through their individual needs. The kids would rotate through schedules that are fixed. So 8 to 9 is math, 9 to 10 is English, etc. And again, I think you can see where you could tie in both online and face-to-face instruction in order to deliver. And some of our schools have lots of teachers coming back. Some of our schools have very few teachers coming back. So having some variety in these models allows them to design something that'll work in the hybrid situation to meet their needs. The next slide is the Flex Academy. The Flex Academy is similar, a big area for computers, but the kids work at their own rate. So in a week, they got to get through so much content. And instead of saying this is a math lab right now or a science lab, the kids could be working on math all day on Monday. On Tuesday, they're working through English language arts, and they have pullouts for other activities. You would, instead of having teachers from one content area, you'd have teachers from a variety of content areas, and the kids would be pulled out by the face-to-face teacher in partnership with the online teacher to work on certain areas that they're having trouble. You might have them having a period with their counselor to make sure that they're progressing through the content and getting the scores that they should, as well as looking at developing some other things like leadership or project-based activities that kids would be working collaboratively in a breakout room. So there's some schools that have combined like all of the third graders or 3rd, 4th, and 5th into one class, and you have one teacher for teaching all 3 levels math, another teaching ELA, another teaching art, and they work together as a team as they work with kids.
I want to talk about this Flex for a minute. I want to talk about high school, which is very difficult. especially for, let's just say we could all come back and we're still missing 300 employees, right? We're not going to have all of the teachers back. And the Flex offers a lot of opportunity at high school to serve more students, especially when you think about students that don't have good internet access or need the support of, say, their community schools coordinator or the social worker or a counselor, also the interaction with their classmates, and so on. So let's say that I'm student X, I'm in that collaborative space. My algebra teacher, my Spanish teacher, and my art teacher are available in person. When it's time for me to go to that class, I can go to that classroom and then come back to this cyber cafe setting with a group of students with someone there to assist me if I need help. I would be getting instruction online, but for that period of time, but I would have better internet access because many students don't have it if they have multiple people at home. They may have internet access, but I should say connectivity issues, they don't have access to good broadband, but then also that adult there to provide them that additional support should they need it, and the social interaction and being able to go to lunch with their friends, some normalcy. Also, if they're participating in clubs or activities, also better access to tutors, volunteers. So we're excited about the opportunity to maximize the number of students with the Flex model. Thank you, Dr. Ryan.
So there's two more models. The next one is a la carte. In this model, and let's take a secondary environment, you've got 4 of your teachers are face-to-face and 2 of your teachers are online. The school would create a learning lab. Some of them will call it a internet cafe, and they set it up with to make it more like a Starbucks, actually, school districts across the country. And for that period where their teacher isn't in face-to-face, they would come to the learning lab or the cafe and be able to sit down and do that work in a supervised area. Often this is used in a library where they would come into the library, they take that 1 or 2 classes, or it may be a class the school doesn't offer. They want, again, this AP trig class that the school doesn't have a teacher for, or there's not enough students to qualify a class for. They could take that in this a la carte mode. So, or either at home or in the school, but the school providing the lab space and the computers, and then there would be somebody there for technical support. Maybe you want to take a French 4 class. Your school doesn't offer that. You could take this in an online format and then be able to get some help from the language arts teachers. So the a la carte model would be a model that would supplement the learning that might be going on in secondary. And then the last model, which is the enriched virtual, this is a model that the people that named this came to Albuquerque and viewed the program that we did there a few years ago. And this is an option that says the kid that school was going to be open for 12 hours a day, say 8 to 8. It had a much smaller footprint or space that was needed. They had kids could schedule, if kids had to work during the day, they could come later in the afternoon or the evening. In this model, we had kids that were getting a C or better, did not have to show up for the face-to-face instruction. But we also found a lot of kids felt like they could get more disciplined instruction or learning done if they went and came every day, even though they didn't have to. This model is designed to help work around a student's personal schedule. We found that there were a lot of kids that had to work to support their families, and the off types of jobs they were being offered were typically offered during the school day. So this, not only did it bring kids back to school who were dropping out because of financial needs or family needs, or they had a child on the way, this offered a way for some kids to take classes during the day and then take these at the evening. Maybe we had a young lady that got pregnant and missed a semester of school and wanted to graduate with a class and was using this to get back. So this gave them flexibility. The last thing I'll say is there's a website on the bottom, blendedlearning.org. If you go to that website, it'll give you some more details about these models. There'll be videos about how it works, and you might be able to get questions. Again, we've been working with principals, and the model was, we'll help you design your model, tell us what your needs are, and let's build something to be successful given the challenges that your community faces and the needs that your kids have. So that's the end of the different models that we've been showing to our principals.
And so, you know, obviously, thank you, Dr. Ryan and team. All of this has been worked on collaboratively with the CNI team, and they've done a really great job. What I want to say is that the traditional hybrid model within that, keeping the separate cohorts, all of this is applicable. And we've done some of it to some degrees. This has been expanded and accelerated, again, to provide our schools not a cookie cutter approach, but options based on the level of staffing that they have, again, to maximize the number of students. But I want to emphasize, as Dr. Ryan mentioned, that there will be applicability on many of these models as we go into next school year, as we work to personalize instruction for our students and help more students achieve success, and address equity, right? Because we do have children, young people are not children, that have adult responsibilities, that having these models might afford them a better opportunity to be able to graduate with access to a quality curriculum and instruction. Facility readiness and general services protocols. Ms. Wagner, is that going to be you?
Yes, ma'am. Superintendent Garcia, Board President Noble, board members. As you know, we've been working since last summer, the operations team, to be prepared to support any learning model. We continue to stand ready. We're providing some services at this time, but we stand ready to contribute in whatever manner is necessary when we return to hybrid on the 22nd. It might look different for different schools, and it might look different for different families. So what that means is that we'll continue to provide meal service in a manner that works for those participating in hybrid or staying at home. We will provide transportation to students who qualify for transportation, and we'll continue to implement our increased cleaning protocols and disinfecting. So really, our services are flexible. We'll respond to the needs of the community, and any child returning to school can expect to have access to the same services. Staff can expect that we will have thorough cleaning protocols and disinfecting strategies in place. We've been prepared for this since late last summer. We look forward to people returning to our school facilities because really that's the heart of our work, supporting the teaching and learning and the individuals attending school in person. So I think we're moving along to safety, protocols and social distancing. Dr. Garcia, that is Mario Salvidras.
Thank you. And I'm just going to share, Alma, if you're listening, can you please check your text messages? We have a technical issue. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Salvidras.
Good evening, Dr. Garcia and everybody in attendance. My portion of it is the safety protocol, social distancing. We presented a slideshow in the past, but we're going to go sum it up what facilities and safety and security have done together. We partnered up, and I think we came up with some really great ideas. As Dr. Garcia said, we received some kudos, which was very nice to hear from an outside agency or departments that we're doing a really great job. So what we've done so far is all schools have standard installation of the following items: signage to enforce hand washing, mask wearing, and social distancing, and we've included it in English and Spanish. Floor markings for social distancing, desk placement and classroom markings for social distancing, reduced cafeteria seating and marking for social distancing, exterior social distancing marking for pickup and drop-offs, outdoor options for meals and classroom instruction, excuse me real quick, hand sanitizing stations, occupancy standards reduced to allow for social distancing, In addition, as Dr. Garcia just mentioned previously, we have provided mask and appropriate PPE for sites to meet the PED requirements for reopening. And we've also secured a stockpile that we can deploy or send out to the schools if enrollment increases or the use or they get used up and they need some more.
All right, I'd like to ask our lead nurse, Anita Het, please, if you could talk about these slides on health, safety, protection, and protocols.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Garcia. Madam President Noble, members of the board, want to talk to you about our health and safety protocols that we've had in place since the beginning of the school year, and we'll continue to follow these. I will continue to report positive cases as well as the school nurses of COVID-19 to the Public Education Department and the Department of Health as and following their guidelines. That includes monitoring rapid response and following the New Mexico Environmental Department requirements for closures. Staff members are required to, staff members and students testing positive for COVID-19 are required to participate in contact tracing as it relates to potential spread at school or department sites. And so that means, you know, the school nursing staff will follow up with anyone that tests positive for COVID. And we have a bunch of protocols that we have developed to assist parents and staff members in knowing exactly, you know, what isolation means and what quarantine means and all of those things. So if we could move to the next slide, thank you. Surveillance testing. As we know, up to 60% of cases of COVID are people that do not have any symptoms at all. And so that's why surveillance testing is required. All faculty, staff, contractors, and volunteers that are working in the building will be subject to weekly surveillance testing. 25% of individuals working on site are required to test when the county is in red. That requirement decreases to 12.5% when the county moves into yellow or green. For the vaccinations update, thank you, Board President Noble, for reiterating that it's about supply and demand. The supply definitely does not meet the demand right now. But as the vaccine becomes available, we will work with Albertsons and Christus St. Vincent to provide opportunities for school staff when it is available to us to be vaccinated. We have completed our COVID vaccine provider application, and our pharmacy license is in the process of being renewed. It's something that happens every 2 years. And so that's in process right now. Nursing staff in schools. We do have some vacancies that have yet to be filled, and we do have some nursing staff with medical accommodations. But that didn't stop us the last time that we were in hybrid. We were able to determine, based on the need of students that were returning for hybrid, where nurses were needed most and to place them as needed in those locations. And we will make sure that there is a nurse available on call for every school. So the next slide, protocols for positive cases. So we've been doing this already, with staff members and when we were in hybrid, students that test positive. So the protocol remains pretty much the same. Staff and students that test positive are required to report it to their supervisor. The lead nurse, which is me, and the school nurse conduct the contact tracing and report positive cases to the New Mexico Department of Health, the PED, and the New Mexico Environmental Department within 4 hours. That's what rapid response means. As soon as you discover a case, you report it and you follow up with contact tracing. Positive cases are sent home to isolate for 10 days from the onset of symptoms. And we determine if they were infectious while they were on site. It's typically based upon the onset of symptoms. 2 days prior to the onset of symptoms, we would consider them to be infectious. And so we determine who they've been in contact with and follow up with contact tracing. Anyone who comes in close contact to an infected individual must quarantine for 14 days from their last contact with the individual. So it can be a little complicated when the infected individual is a household member, because it may actually lead to an extended period of quarantine. We always look at where the infected person was in the building, and we have to close whatever area, room, classroom, facility, depending on where the individual was. And we have to close it down for 24 hours and then increase the disinfection according to the CDC guidelines, which facilities already talked about earlier. We have to then communicate about the positive cases and close contact with our school community so that they're aware of what's going on. But we also have to communicate with the close contacts that have been identified through contact tracing to let them know what procedures they need to follow to keep their family safe, etc. As always, we consult with the PED Rapid Response Team and our school health advocate with the Department of Health regarding the need to close any facilities. And currently the guidelines are basically someone tests positive, we close that area. If, depending on the number of people in the building and the number of rapid responses within a certain period of time, determines whether or not we close the schools. But anytime that we are considering anything like that, we have to consult with the PED, Department of Health, and the New Mexico Environmental Department.
And Ms. Hatt, would you please clarify, for rapid responses within a certain period of time, we have to close that school for how long?
It's my understanding it's 2 weeks.
What? It cut out.
2 weeks, 14 days. It's the same length as the amount of time for quarantine.
And so it doesn't relate, what people need to understand, it doesn't matter if they contracted it at school or not. If we have 4 positive cases and they were contracted in the community, we very well may have to close the school. We came very close to that this year, even when we didn't have students on site. But the ironic thing about it was that they weren't contracted on site. It was community spread, and some were actually caught through the surveillance testing because they were asymptomatic. And so I think this is a point that our families need to understand, that we could be open. We might not have any transmission at school, as many parents have said that the transmission is pretty low in schools. But if there is community spread and these people get picked up either through the surveillance testing or otherwise, it is possible that a school could be deemed closed. Does not mean that the school isn't safe or that we don't have good protocols in place. And this is something that I think is worth repeating every so often, because I do believe that there can be misconception of a site not being a safe site.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia.
Next slide.
This is Deputy Superintendent Fink's slide.
She's muted. She was talking, but there
Sorry
we go.
about that. I'm talking to myself. So I'll be talking about the service capacity and planning for staff and students. At this point, and this is fluctuating like literally every day, there's 278 staff volunteering to return as of February 8th. The high school and middle school volunteers or teachers are at about 129, And the elementary has shot way up since last week. Last week, for instance, we had 93 and it's up to 149 this week. So that's really good news. Site administrators have been meeting with returning staff, preparing plans for the hybrid plan, and returning staff will prepare their classrooms and receive students just as they did last semester. We're also developing the on-site internet hubs or cafes that Tom calls the a la carte, and getting ready for that. It's taking the whole, tech department and other groups to help set those cafes up, if you will. District staff and departments have been meeting with principals, providing that support. And Tom, again, reiterated the different kinds of support that we're doing. For instance, in the flex or whatever model it is, that we turn around and try to help on what that instruction would look like. And so we're trying to serve the schools in that way. Sites are developing the visuals, whether they're videos or slides or pictures, to provide students and families prior to arrival of the students on campus, so that they can kind of get a feel of what their school is going to look like, especially if they haven't been involved with hybrid before. At this point, I don't have the number of students that are planning on returning at this point. The principals have not completed that. We'll have that number out next week. I don't know if Dr. Garcia has anything more than I do, but at this point, I don't have those numbers.
I don't, but what I do want to say is that we do want to provide every opportunity for students, whoever wants to attend, to be able to accommodate them in one manner or another. And so, as Ms. Sink said, we're meeting with the principals tomorrow afternoon. We may have a preliminary view, but when you consider the high schools, there's large numbers of people to contact. And so hearing back from everyone, we may not know right up until school opens. I also want to mention that these numbers are not static. If educators happen to get vaccinated and decide they want to come back, even though they didn't volunteer by the 22nd, we will continue to take volunteers and expand our capacity. So this is not a static situation. It's quite dynamic. It's not like we're going to hold the floodgate and then say, okay, on this date, we're going to, expand again. I think this will be gradual as we continue to add. However, once the 1B and wherever the teachers wind up in that have had the window of time to be vaccinated, and we've provided those opportunities with our clinic, we will be going back to the table with NEA to say, okay, by this date, if you chose to get vaccinated or not, if you don't have a medical accommodation, we expect that you will be coming back to work. In person, I should say, because they have been working very hard, as you all know.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Ms. Sink.
So as we expand the number of in-person learning opportunities, again, as Tom has mentioned, the different models, and especially, if you will, that a la carte or hub model, cafe, there's lots of names, as you can see. We're looking at numbers varying at each site, and it also depends on the staff volunteering to return. So every site's going to be a little different. But when you look at the students coming in, we have to prioritize because we can't have every student on campus right now. And what we've given a thought to for principals to look at is maybe making it a point system, like a 1 to 5 point system. And is the student in specialized programs or the special ed high needs programs? Is the student an English language learner? Is the student without reliable internet? Or is the student all three of those? If that student's all three of those, they're going to jump to the highest number. Students failing or disengaged with social emotional needs. It's going to be really hard to decide this. It's not going to be that easy, and principals are working on that now. Seniors who are not on track for graduation, very serious. Students in transitional grade levels. I think we'll be able to help more seniors now with that cafe idea. Having trouble with graduation, we can look at also the different kinds of software we have to help the seniors do that and get caught back up, if you will. Sites will contact families starting the week of February 8th, and actually I think they've even started before now. Schools will announce the model of instruction by February 9th. We'll be talking with principals tomorrow afternoon. Students will be divided, and you already know this, into the two cohorts. Cohort A will attend Monday and Tuesdays, and cohort B will attend Thursdays and Fridays. And as usual, and you can't see this, or I can't see it, but I'll just say it, that Wednesdays will remain for deep cleaning in the classrooms, but there will be on an asynchronous work with on a one-on-one with teachers and students, or even in groups with teachers and students. So Wednesdays will stay pretty much the same.
What I do want to mention, though, you probably meant could be synchronous. It's not only asynchronous, it could be synchronous if they're working, the teacher is working with the kiddos, right, Ms. Sink?
Yeah, if they're like working one-on-one, or even if, now that we have the group opportunities in the Google Meets, they can even do groups.
So that will be synchronous. And I also just want to mention that the cohorting, that's a requirement by PED. That's not a Santa Fe Public Schools concept. This is a requirement that we keep them in separate cohorts, and that they are only in school 2 days a week. Again, we do want to provide an opportunity for everyone who wants to come back to be able to come back. And when that exceeds what, let's say, the number of people that have volunteered at a school, we may problem solve with the principals to see if there's some other way that we can manage to provide services to everybody who wants to come back. At least that is our goal at this time. Ongoing communication. Cody, did you want to do the slide, or you want me to do it?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia, the district uses a variety of platforms and mediums to communicate information to our community and to the stakeholders. And we're going to continue using these platforms, which include the SFPS bulletin, which is available on our website. If you haven't seen the bulletin, if you go to the red button on the website, the weekly bulletin button, it will take you to like a little document container, and it has all of our previous bulletins if you haven't seen those. The school websites and the district website, sfps.info. The social media channels, Facebook and Twitter. If you don't have our Facebook, it is facebook.com/SFPS district, and that is twitter.com/SFPS district as well. Town halls, which are on our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel URL is not as friendly as our Facebook and Twitter. So if you type in Santa Fe Public Schools on YouTube, our channel will pop up right at the top. We appear on radio shows, robocalls, continued robocalls, and the big green button on the district website, which is labeled 2020-2021 resource guide, I believe. And that houses all of our information on COVID, reentry, anything that has to do with COVID or reentry, it all lives in that green button.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, we're ready to stand for questions. I felt like there was something else I wanted to mention and I forgot. And it's like right here and I just can't remember it. So hopefully it'll come back to me. Thank you all for your patience in allowing us to present. We're ready to stand for questions.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm sure it will come back. Cody brought back one of the things I wanted to say, which was that button and all the updates on the website, because again, in the spirit of everybody staying informed, that's a really useful tool. And I appreciate how often and complete the information is provided there. So, questions from the board on the reentry?
I remembered, Madam President, in case people are wondering.
Go ahead.
What's really important is that people might be wondering why the board isn't voting tonight. A lot of districts are, and I may have said it earlier, but I want to reiterate that our voluntary hybrid program and what we submitted was approved, was presented to the board. This was early in the fall. And so we're not opening for the first time. All that's happening is we're expanding to middle and high school. So that's why there's not a board action tonight.
Yes, we're updating the plan. We approved it at that time, and
Had approved it, right?
and we suspect that some people are looking at Dr. Garcia's plans throughout the state to see what we're doing, and obviously there's been a lot of work and a lot of thinking and a lot of different models and solutions brought forward. One thing that I also want to say is that the Santa Fe New Mexican had an incredibly succinct and, in my view, right on editorial in the paper yesterday. So it's something I would point everyone to, and the succinctness of what they get to in terms of athletics and the complexities of reopening. They didn't necessarily get into collective bargaining as you did at the beginning of this presentation, Dr. Garcia, but they did manage a lot of nuance in the relatively few words that an editorial is given. So there's a lot to understand here, and we're all working to get there. And we really want kids back, just to reiterate that. I know you, Dr. Garcia, and all the staff members are completely aware of how much better it is to be in person. Many of us who are, juggling jobs and our kids at home, even though we have all of the privilege of comfort and many other things, are still really struggling under pandemic exhaustion and what we've been up against. And most of all, the students need it. They do need each other. I keep going back and forth in my head, and it's a completely false argument of, teenagers, high school seniors, or really young kids. Who is it harder for? And the fact is, it's hard for everyone at all ends of the spectrum and everywhere in between. And we've got to get kids back in school. And the fact is, right now, there are many factors to be balanced, and we heard about a lot of them in the presentation there. So with that,
Madam President.
Yes, please. Secretary Bozé, go ahead.
Thank you. Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia, I would like to say thank you for the very thorough presentation. It's clear how much time and energy has gone into developing or, collecting, even though these weren't necessarily invented new models, but recognizing just the sheer fact that you recognize that there's not a one-size-fits-all approach, and that you are very dedicated to maximizing the hybrid program for as many students as can possibly be served at a school site, and that you've given so many options to do so, I just think is really incredible and deserves to be applauded. So thank you first and foremost for that. I had heard, because the schools did start to roll out some, announce some of their plans today, I had heard some questions and concerns from some families that they were getting messages of it's going to be the same as it was in the fall. So if you were here in the fall, then you're welcome to come back. But if you weren't here in the fall, just wait until things change. And so I just would like to encourage to make sure that individual school sites really are using some of these creative solutions to bring back as many students as possible, because we have all agreed that that's the most important thing right now. So let's, I just hope that we can work on that and follow up on that if it's necessary. My other couple notes here. I don't recall who I recently had this conversation with as far as communication coming directly from school sites seems to be a little bit more parents, and I speak for myself. Before I was on the school board, I oftentimes didn't pay attention to district messages as closely as I paid to messages that came directly from my kids' home school site. So I think that making sure that all individual schools are rolling out communication on a regular basis, be that about hybrid reentry or sending email blasts with the district weekly newsletter updates, those things might be better, on the radar of parents if it's coming directly from the principal's name that they recognize. And along that line, also to please make sure that everything is always in Spanish as well as in English, because that, I believe, is not always happening at all school sites. So that's very important. And those are my immediate comments about the presentation tonight.
Madam President,
Thank you.
if I may. Thank you. Those are very good suggestions. We give it all out, but I don't think it always gets all out. We have our social media specialists at all the sites, but I think we could do better. And so I really do appreciate that feedback. We will definitely work on that with our principals when we visit with them tomorrow. And I do feel, we don't want to dictate to them everything that they're communicating out, but I think certain key messages that we want out as a district to be more intentional about ensuring that the school is getting it out. Because I agree, when I am at certain town halls or meetings with certain parents at certain sites, it is evident that they're not aware of things that we've put out at the district level. And so we've got to figure out other ways. And I think that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Other questions, comments from the board? Dr. Gonzalez.
I had my little hand up there, but anyway, I'm pretty tired right now, but I'm so impressed again and again and again with what Santa Fe Public Schools has done as far as technology goes. And I know I'm in a situation now where there's lots of technology issues at the legislature, and they had less time than the schools probably to get organized and up and running. But again, you guys have done such an incredible job of getting the schools prepared, getting the teachers prepared, the students prepared. I'm just very impressed. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez.
Madam President, this is Rudy.
Go ahead, Vice President Garcia.
Just real quick, I won't go into details, but once again, as my colleagues have said, thank you for staff. You guys have done an excellent job, and we are very, very, very fortunate to have Dr. Garcia and your entire team for the Santa Fe Public Schools. And for people that don't realize, we're ahead of the curve than a lot of other school districts throughout the state and probably the nation. And I appreciate your entire staff, Dr. Garcia. Just a couple of things. The concerns that I have is that children that have a challenge or special need, what are we doing? How are we going to help them at? As Linda, Dr. Sink said, how are we going to help them? The other question I just have is a la carte mode. I understand it. I realize what's happening with it. It's just what happens with the younger students, the kids that can't drive to the Starbucks per se. When a parent asked me what the mask wearing, children are. What happens when the kid says, you actually went to school with a different mask because kids trade out their masks. Those are just little things I hear from parents. And how do we address that? Let's see what else. And I think the other questions have been answered. And once again, I think we're very fortunate to have the entire team that we have for Santa Fe Public Schools. And I appreciate you all, as my colleagues have said. And with that, I will turn it back to you, Madam President. Thank you.
Madam President, would you like me to go ahead and respond?
Yes, please, Dr. Garcia.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Vice President Garcia, and thank you for your kind comments. Let's see if I can remember all of them. In terms of the students trading masks, When kids are walking home or, things that they do, oftentimes we don't have control over it. When they're in our supervision, we have a zero tolerance policy in our code of conduct that they do have to keep their masks on and that we provide them. I would imagine that teachers would discourage and not allow it when they're in our sight, but it's with anything, right, during school. It's hard to control 100%. The second piece around the Starbucks was an example of the environment that we might set up in a school so that in other parts of the country, they've set up, like, say, the cafetorium at Capitol High, make it look more like a Starbucks, right, in that sort of environment so that it feels like an internet cafe, so to speak. But we're not suggesting that students would actually go to a Starbucks. So sorry that we didn't make that clear.
No, no.
Yeah, and in terms of special education, remains a tremendous challenge. The teachers that teach medically fragile students have been categorized in the 1A group. And as soon as that group has been vaccinated, we will expect and we'll work with the union, because I think we have the nurses in that category too, in the MOU, that they will come back first. And then obviously students in self-contained classrooms will have a priority. In the meantime, our executive director for special education, Julie Lucero, has had to work with many families on their IEPs to look at alternatives to how we can meet their needs. Or in some cases, we've had to offer compensatory education in the summer to make up for, PT or OT or speech and language therapy that they have missed during the school year. So we are working with our families on an individual basis, and it's our hope that we will be able to bring them back as soon as we can. I hope I answered everything.
Yes, you did. Thank you, Superintendent, Madam President. A couple of other things that I thought or think is very important is that, as you mentioned, my other colleagues mentioned, we're having to do this because the Public Education Department, which is the state of New Mexico, has said we will close all the schools, and within a 2-week period now all schools are open. And so our district is actually, we're trying to figure out how we're going to do this. And so once again, I appreciate you and your team, because it's up. The Public Education Department has said you will open the schools, and so we're working our hardest to figure out what we need to do, and I appreciate that. And it's just something new, as the president said, that we're doing this nationwide, and we'll do the best for our students and for the community as well as the parents. And we have to hang in there, and it's challenging times in the nation these days. And but thank you once again, Superintendent, as well as your entire team. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I wanted to just underline something you said as well about the random testing, which I know, and Dr. Gonzalez is probably aware, is part of what happened in the legislature, that survey testing for COVID that's happening is part of what can happen. And, we'll catch asymptomatic folks, which is a good thing. And, other things, but it is entirely possible that we could open up and then have to shut down if there are cases, asymptomatic or otherwise, contracted anywhere that appear in staff. Also, to the arena that Ms. Sink covered, with more teachers volunteering, and that's really great to see those numbers that are going up, because, I mean, personally, I am confident our schools are safe, the protocols are there, we do have collective bargaining, and our agreement is voluntary, so there it is. But as more volunteers happen, we can and will bring back more students, correct? And that will be because we were all given the survey at the beginning of the year of what do you want to do, but that won't necessarily hold, correct? If a student's teacher volunteers to go back, and then therefore the students are able to, assuming the physical distancing is okay in that particular school site, in that particular classroom, those families will be given the opportunity to go into hybrid, correct?
That is correct, Madam President, members of the board. And if a family would rather not come back this year, we will accommodate them as well.
And will there be support provided for teachers as they have to juggle those things? How does that work for in person and then continuing with remote instruction?
So Ms. Sink, you want to talk about all the professional development that's been provided for teachers around working in a hybrid mode?
So there's different things that we've been doing. One of them is it actually in the model that, again, Dr. Ryan discussed in the flip model, whereas, and again, as he discussed, that the teacher could video, for instance, their lesson, and then the kids that are at home can watch that video instead of getting that lesson presented in person. And then when they return the next 2 days, they are literally practicing during that time or doing labs, etc. So it's literally
getting coaching for the teacher.
Yes, and another, I think the other way that many of the teachers even tried in the first go around, and in fact, we got to see videos of that, and it was very productive, is they were using just microphones or different cameras and able to talk to both groups at the same time. They were using their smart boards, for instance, and they're hooked up to the smart board so the kids can see their teacher right there, of course, face to face, but also at the same time, that group that are virtual. So they're able to present their lesson at the same time. And so we've worked with the teachers on that as well. So there's different ways to skin that cat.
And we've bought swivel cameras, but they were so back ordered. We ordered them early, but some are starting to come in, and we prioritize like lab classes, say industrial arts or programs at ECO that are real hands-on, so that if the teacher is working in a car, he's got the swivel camera so that the kids that are at home can actually see what the teacher is doing.
And our digital learning coaches will be fantastic at helping teachers learn that skill quickly for using those cameras.
Absolutely. Hallelujah for technology and how much we embraced that before the pandemic, and it's paying off very well now. Thank you. And let's see. To individual school sites, will teachers who are returning, and maybe this is a discussion for the principals, but be given some orientation to the protocols and any of the things for the individual school sites? And I appreciate all of the distancing, the mask wearing, the physical markers, and those have been done, I know, across the board. And of course, the ventilation improvements, which are really important. But of course, we have such a diversity of physical places to manage. Will the staff be given an opportunity to go through the protocols at their individual sites before returning?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board. The toolkit was updated on the 15th, and then I found out that it was updated again either the 26th or the 29th. And so we've been very busy today reviewing the toolkit. We'll be looking at it again in Cabinet and SS Cabinet tomorrow. We'll be reviewing it with the principals. There's some components that have to be dealt with at the district level, and there's some things that the sites have to be made aware of. And so, yes, we will be going over, well, some of it has already been done with the principals in terms of like how kids are fed in the cafeteria, where the kids line up for the buses. I mean, everything is different. Everything's marked now. And, but we haven't with the middle and high schools, right? How the kids come and go and all of that. So we will be working on that. Their supervisors will we've been having group meetings with elementary, middle, and high school, giving them chunks of information because we don't want to overwhelm them. So right now it's about, here's the models, find out what staff want to come back, find out how many parents want to come back, work with your supervisor on the model. The next big piece will be, let's go over all the protocols. And some of the things we already did in the fall, it's really getting the middle and high schools up to speed. But people adapted very quickly, and the students did too. And the compliance by the students was far superior than people thought it would be in terms of mask wearing and following the instructions. I think they've gotten used to, protocols in the grocery store or a church or whatnot. And so they just see it as another extension of school. There wasn't the problem that people thought that kids wouldn't be compliant. They really have been.
Thank you very much. And I think, as you know, Dr. Garcia, I got kicked out during the presentation due to my internet. So forgive me if this was covered. But the piece about satellite kitchens, and just because we've seen so much in the way of food insecurity, and we know the schools have always been an incredibly important part of this. I'm glad to see that we will continue the bus routes and curbside service in addition to, so this is going to be running food service, if I'm not mistaken, in 3 ways now, which will be the bus route and curbside service. It'll be the in-person for hybrid students, and then the satellite kitchens. And can you just tell me once more what gap those are filling and how piece will work?
Madam President and members of the board, Deputy Superintendent Wagner will go over that. And then if our Executive Director for Student Wellness, Ms. O'Brien, if you can also talk about Adelante, and then also how the communities and schools coordinators also coordinate around food insecurity. And then Ms. Wagner, you also know about the partnerships with many of the food depots and whatnot. So go ahead first, Ms. Wagner.
Board President Noble, board members, Superintendent Garcia. The models included in the PowerPoint are really just an extension of what we're doing now. I think that you summarized that perfectly. So we do delivery out into neighborhoods via our school buses because we found that our stationary locations at the schools weren't yielding as many students as we had hoped. So we surveyed literally by making hundreds of phone calls, families, and found many people didn't know about the food service, or they were in a circumstance that if a location change could be made, they could receive food. So we adjusted after winter break and are reaching more families this way. The satellite model is really because a kitchen staff of 5 to 7 people once designed to serve 500 kids may only be serving a couple dozen kids in person and maybe 3 or 4 more dozen meals out in the community. And so that same staff can produce multiple meals to either go out on a bus, be served curbside, or be delivered to another hybrid school and then served to the in-person kiddos. So the satellite model is really just being utilized to use existing managers and staff to produce more meals, we hope. We did find of note that during the first hybrid trial, our food service didn't go up significantly. It seems as if the people we're reaching in the community may, in fact, be the same kids we're serving in hybrid. Maybe there may be an uptick with the secondary. Middle and high schoolers coming to school is new. So hopefully we'll have our meal counts go up there. I think Ms. O'Brien, I don't know if you want to talk about food insecurity and some of the things Adelante and other partners are doing with food banks and food deliveries around the community. I'm happy to jump back in, but that covers student nutrition services.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. Good evening, Board President Noble, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia. Adelante really hasn't skipped a beat, honestly, since we went in March. We went remote and then hybrid. So Adelante continues to do our Thursday distribution. We certainly saw an uptick in the number of families that needed food in March, in the spring. And so we continue to serve about 70, 75 families that come every Thursday to BF Young. And also in talking with the coordinator, Tiana, recently, we're doing some planning around how can we actually get the food to some families who just simply can't get to the grab and go on Thursdays. So we continue to do that. Adelante has an extensive list of resources that we update where we're identifying different resources and this is within the community for them to get food. Adelante, our program itself runs a little bit later than when our school ends. So we service students through June. So we're really proud of that and we'll continue to do that this year. We were really fortunate this year. We received CARES Act funding from both the county and the city of Santa Fe. So we were really able to help our families with, substantial financial support. That includes making sure that they weren't evicted. That includes any sort of food support. Our teen parent program received funding as well. So we were able to, get some real key utilities support for the families. So I feel very fortunate that these partnerships exist for Adelante and our community definitely recognizes them and supports us financially to be able to support our families. So that feels very strongly supported.
And then the two schools that have community schools that were funded through the state, their coordinators also partner with community groups around food insecurity, as well as the communities in schools programs that the board funded also are operational. So not to mention other community partners, right? Like Jody Breslin and her church and others like them in the community that also do their job to try to get food to our families. So there's just been quite a coordinated effort around food insecurity, thank God. It's been very, very much needed. And we're very grateful for all the community partners that support us.
Yes, absolutely. And we so appreciate the community partners that are engaging in this. And thank you all for, I know, continuing to problem solve and try and reach more families. Unfortunately, we're probably not out of the woods in terms of recession, evictions, food insecurity for quite some time. And we've got to work on this as a community again and again and again in every way we can. And I know you all do that. Thank you. Last but not least on my questions, and again, I apologize if I missed some of this, but athletics. And I think in part because we still are waiting to hear what Albuquerque Public Schools and Las Cruces Public Schools will be doing. So, and that's a large part of the athletic participation in the state. But the different models described here, Dr. Garcia, do allow us to reach more students, correct? And that opens up the potential for athletic participation. Is that right?
Madam President, members of the board, it's really quite interesting because there isn't anything any kind of written directive other than generally speaking, providing students the opportunity to be in school that want to be in school. It's not clear if it's by district or by school. We're making every effort to provide as much opportunity to those that want it. With that said, Mr. Chavez, do you just want to briefly go over what we are offering, since Ms. Noble, I think, may have missed out that part, what we have in practice and what's being expanded?
Absolutely. Good evening, President Noble, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia. Currently, what we're doing is practicing in pods, which is allowed by the health order and the NMAA, and they're in 4-to-1, a grouping of 4-to-1. Right now, we're practicing for football, volleyball, and cross country, because those will be the first sports officially allowed once the season is underway. We will transition back the other sports accordingly, and when the time allows. So what we're doing is basing it off of the official seasons and how it falls. So we don't want to really develop out our footprint on our sites without knowing that our seasons are going to take place. So yes, we want to make sure that we're providing the options, but we want to make sure we're providing a safe environment so we can prevent the spread of COVID.
So can you mention the 3 sports now and then the one that's expanded beginning
Absolutely.
March 1st?
So official practice for football, cross country, and volleyball will begin February 22nd, and official practice for soccer is March 1st. And those will be the first sports, if allowed to play, will be allowed back to full competition and actually competing against other schools and districts.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And it's so clear. There's so many things that we do: athletics, food, transportation, oh yeah, and instruction, teaching and learning. It's a lot to cover. Okay. And of course, it'll all be happening during allergy season for those of us who get that. So that's going to be interesting for the community and collective anxiety around sneezes and runny noses. And of course, masks are the critical thing. But this is going to be interesting. And we just hope we can all manage the fear, look at the data, look at the science, and do what's best for our students and the folks who support them. Other questions or comments from the board at this stage? Yes, Secretary Bozé.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, Dr. Garcia, I have a little bit of remarks prepared that are not directly related to questions on the presentation, but it does a little bit touch on the subject of the voluntary reentry. So as always, I want to honor and validate the stress and the hardship of the last 11 months. I imagine all of us, as well as our students, are less happy than we were pre-COVID. We all miss our friends, our hugs, our social activities, and just the control of our day-to-day lives, which we took for granted a year ago. These are all things that are a function of the pandemic, and we should all strive to maintain that perspective. That said, our teachers are professionals. They are dedicated and passionate. I venture to guess they care more about student success than anything else. We have seen that in the extra long hours they are working to provide distance learning, their creativity and ingenuity and persistence. In this time of great uncertainty, I trust them to make the right decision about when to return to the classroom, pre or post-vaccine. There is no universal answer to this, as it is a very personal decision for how much risk to assume during a global pandemic. We have all made the choices that are right for ourselves and our families, as is our right to do so. I believe that teachers deserve the same right to choose their level of acceptable risk right now. As a nurse, I live and work at the intersection of science and emotion. I'm a nurse because I care deeply, and I am dedicated to science, and the two are not mutually exclusive. The studies and the data from the fall semester of in-person schooling are very promising. But also, I would not and will not risk my life or my children's lives or demand that any of my teacher friends risk their lives on 4 months of data and research. I have full confidence in the safety measures put into place by SFPS. I believe wholeheartedly that teachers and students returning to the classroom on February 22nd will be safe. I am grateful for the teachers and staff that are willing to do so right now, and I know with time and vaccines, the rest will follow. In the meantime, I urge grace and kindness, as well as collaboration and innovative solutions. We should all be thinking about not just our personal priorities, but also care and concern for our communities at large. If we're mindful and intentional moving forward, I have full faith that we can get through this stronger than we were before, together. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Other questions, comments from the board at this point? And of course, we do still have our action items, which include a resolution on prioritizing vaccines and some other things. So, okay, hearing nothing else. I'm trying not to miss your hand, Dr. Gonzalez. No hands there. Okay. We will go ahead and move on the agenda. Thank you all so much for all of the hard work that is reflected in the presentation, because the presentation itself is work, but really it reflects what has been months, weeks, and hundreds, if not thousands of hours of preparation. And as Vice President Garcia said, I do also believe, I think it's quite clear that we are leading in a lot of ways on this, and we are in the state we are in. So we have to follow the rules from the governor's office, from the public education department, and enshrined in our laws. So thank you all for making it work with so many different factors. And I have great faith that we will be getting back as soon as is humanly possible. And I know how committed you all are to that, because we have all seen the issues. We've done pretty well. It's not been a disaster. It's not a lost year, but it is a really tough year, and a year that we will all need to heal from in lots of ways. And I'm sure we'll be hearing about that in the months ahead. Anyway, okay, moving on to action items. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm jumping way ahead. Yes, Dr. Garcia, were you just going to get me on the agenda, or did you have something else to say?
I needed to go to 7 superintendent's announcements, because we
why don't we just go ahead and
have
follow
some guests that are waiting to be recognized as well. So I'll go through it quickly, because I know it's been a long night. And
Can we just, I know it's been, I just want to, for the sake of following the agenda, go through 6 in case there are any board announcements and follow up. Anyone going once? Okay, gone. Now we're on to superintendent's announcements and follow up.
Sorry. I jumped over 6. I apologize. Madam President, members of the board, Santa Fe Public Schools pre-K teachers featured in a preschool during the pandemic video series. Ms. Tara Hughes and Ms. Brethany Behena have been invited. On January 20th, the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center made available the first 12 episodes of the new preschool during the pandemic series. This series illustrates how the fields of early education and early childhood special education have been successfully supporting preschoolers and their families during the COVID pandemic. Segment 3 features Santa Fe Public Schools' very own early childhood special educators, Ms. Brittany Bena Griffith and Ms. Tara Hughes, who share strategies they use to include all children in their virtual classrooms. And there's a short video, and I don't know if they're here with us today. Cody, are you ready to show that video?
I'll pull it up right now.
I want to thank Christy Foreman, our NIE principal. I don't know if you're here, as well as Deputy Superintendent Wagner, who's NIE supervisor, Julie Lucero, Executive Director of Special Ed Services, who is a priority for priority support for Ms. Behena Griffith and Ms. Hughes, and I think you're here. So that's so exciting, and thank you for being here. Well, Mr. Donarski setting it up, would you like to say a few words? And thank you for hanging with us tonight.
Madam President, Superintendent Garcia, and members of the board, just thank you for acknowledging this work. But I wanted to say that Tara and I are really the beneficiaries of this. This has allowed us to really reflect on our teaching and collaborate more deeply than ever before. And the parents that have been involved in this project and our EAs and our coach with the district have been really helpful in this project, and just again helped us hopefully better our instruction during this time. It hasn't always been easy, but it's definitely been worthwhile.
Are we ready? Ms. Hughes, did you want to say anything?
I just also wanted to comment and say that it was a really wonderful opportunity to really reflect on our teaching and to really understand all the wonderful things that teachers are doing out there in this remote environment, and that reaching children and making progress is happening.
Mr. Donarski, what's our ETA here on that video? There it comes.
I am Brittany Behena Griffith. I teach 4-year-old pre-K in Santa Fe Public Schools in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I am our buildings lead teacher.
I am Tara Hughes. I am a 4Y preschool teacher. I teach an inclusion classroom. I am the school's contact teacher, which means that I support teachers with special education questions and writing IEPs.
For the pandemic, I could have 18 4-year-olds in my classroom at one time. We cap 6 IEP students, and then the rest are typical peer models.
So my class is very similar to Brittany's. I can have up to 20 kids.
Lots of learning through play, cooperative learning with our peers and talking with one another, lots of questions being posed and then exploring to find the answers. It was fun.
It's very similar to Brittany's. It's play-based, lots of exploring, a lot of collaboration, working together, which will be really interesting to see, you know, how we continue all of that in a pandemic.
We started this fall all in remote learning, meaning that all 18 kiddos are at their homes learning from an iPad that was provided by the school district. Myself and my 2 EAs are on our computers guiding whole and small group instruction daily with our kids.
Even though we knew we were going remote, we knew that what we needed to do was really include all of our students and scaffold and modify and lesson plan and come up with ideas so that all of our students were included in the learning.
I never would have thought that teaching with a green screen could be so much fun.
I should say in the beginning of the year, I was reflecting all the time and I was like, this isn't working. I'm not happy. This is awful. I'm not teaching these kids anything. Like, what am I doing? And for me to reflect right now back on what we just talked about, I was like, it's not that bad. Like, it is working. I am accommodating my students. I am differentiating. I am scaffolding. So that was really great for me to kind of come together and talk about this and kind of realize that it might not be ideal for me right now and ideal for my students, but there are really good things happening. And I feel like, okay, we got this. We can do this remote learning. We can do this.
Everything I do, I have to think about how can this work for all of my kids? And so we're learning, and that's what teachers do, right? We're adapting and we're learning.
Oh, that's
Yay. And you know, what also strikes me about it too, that I think we forget is how much children have learned of their technological skills have gone way, I mean, they've really accelerated, right? And these itty bitties that are able to do this, I think is quite phenomenal. And also how kids have learned that their homes can be learning environments, that with their toys and the food and being out in the garden and going to the park and their pets, and the creativity of learning in the environment that you're in. I've just been blown away, just like this little bit that I just saw now. But I see the creativity of what the teachers have been doing is really quite phenomenal. And I appreciate, that's what I wanted to say, Ms. Noble. I appreciate when you said it hasn't been a lost year. It has not been a lost year. There has so much that our students have learned. And thank you, Ms. Hughes and Ms. Benny, to bring this recognition to the Santa Fe Public Schools and being included in this training video.
Yes, that was incredibly beautiful, and it really sort of lifts the spirit after a lot of this. And thank you both for sticking around with us tonight and reminding us that, yes, teachers are learning and adapting constantly, and that's why we love them and want to lift you up and all the school staff. There has been so much to face and move through this year. And Tara, your honesty in the video there about how you felt in the beginning, it's really extraordinary and exceptional, and I think mirrors a lot of what many of us parents have experienced. And hopefully we will emerge stronger and better for it, and have learned really valuable things that will carry us through. And, I don't know if you were paying attention earlier, but I've really spent a bunch of time thinking, high school seniors or the little ones. And it's incredibly challenging for little ones, but it's clear that you all are making it work. And it's great that this recognition has come. And, I think we do all actually need to pause and spend some time to reflect on what we've learned, what we've achieved, what we've accomplished, and what the kids have accomplished, as Dr. Garcia is very good at reminding us.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for sticking through
yes,
3+ hours of meeting with us. And you probably have, jobs tomorrow or something to do.
Thank you. Two Santa Fe Public School students are in a three-way tie for first place in the Santa Fe County Spelling Bee. The students in the three-way tie are Camila Carrion from Santa Fe Prep, Amaya Carrion from Carlos Elementary, and Esperanza Webb from Ortiz Middle School. I don't know if our two students are here. I hope they're not, because I bet they're exhausted. But if you're here, we'd like to say hello and recognize you. Well, good. I'm glad. Hopefully you're in bed by now. Each student scored 18 of 25 on the online test. Scripps, sponsor of the National Bee, did not anticipate a scenario of a tie. So since 3 students will advance to the state level, the only option was toward all 3 first place. In the event that one of the students is unable to attend, Holden Harvey Romero from Rio Grande School was in 4th place finisher with a score of 16 of 25. Our deepest thanks and congratulations, and he was here earlier, Jeff Pinkerton with the Santa Fe Public Schools Special Ed Instructional Support Team, was a Santa Fe County Spelling Bee coordinator, for his work in organizing this event. But again, for Santa Fe Public Schools to have 2 of the finalists. And thank you, Mr. Pinkerton, and thank you for staying with us tonight. Would you like to say a few words about this extraordinary online spelling bee?
Thank you, Madam President, Santa Fe School Board, and Dr. Garcia. It was quite a challenge this year, as all education has been. It was really interesting because the format that they provided, this is taking place all over the country, and what they ask us to do is to provide an online test for students. We normally have a big spelling bee at the college, and then they advance on, but it was a 25-word test, and they were given 45 minutes to complete that test, and very competitive. We didn't know what kind of participation we would have, but it was really exciting that all three of the young ladies did phenomenal. The test was really difficult. So we have a three-way tie, two sisters, and one from Santa Fe Prep, one from Carlos Gilbert, and one from Ortiz. And boy, it was really exciting. And the girls are really exciting. Holden is just hoping one of the girls drop out so he gets to go also. But I wish there could be four. But it was a great competition. A lot of challenge. The teachers that sponsored it in the school sites here in our schools really had a challenge to figure it all out. It was not easy. So we're really looking forward to our old way of doing spelling bees the old traditional way again. So I'm on the state committee, and we will be doing the state spelling bee in March. So thank you very much.
And we'll be cheering them on. Let us know how I'm sure you'll let us know.
Oh, yes.
If they win state. So best of luck to the Santa Fe County team.
Usually our Santa Fe students do very well there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pinkerton. Appreciate you being here.
That concludes my announcements, Madam President and members of the board.
Well, thank you. That's exciting stuff. Very uplifting. Appreciate it. Moving on, as we can still count from superintendent announcements to item 9, action items. We're there. We will start with the consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam President.
This is Rudy. I move for approval.
Oh, okay. I was going to say Mr. Robert Martinez is here if there were any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. Thank you, Secretary Garcia. I think that we might want to vote on the minutes of the January 21st meeting separately, as Board Member Price was not here for those.
Is she still with us, Madam?
She is.
Oh, okay.
So if that is an acceptable amendment to the motion, Vice President Garcia, for consent items 1 through 5.
Madam President, yes, that's an amendment. I'm okay with that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe Secretary Bose, you were seconding the motion.
I believe that was Dr. Gonzalez, but
oh,
yeah,
Dr. Gonzalez, and is that amendment acceptable to you?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? We'll do a roll call vote. Vice President Garcia?
Yes, thank you.
Secretary Bose?
yes.
Dr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Board Member Price? Oh. I don't actually see the number anymore, though it was there a moment ago. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on. And I'll go ahead and move for approval of the minutes of January 21st.
Madam President, second. This is Rudy.
Thank you very much, Secretary Garcia. We'll do a roll call vote. Sorry, Vice President Garcia. Now it's your turn to vote on those minutes. Vice President Garcia, your vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Secretary Bose?
Yes.
Dr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
And the president votes yes on both those things, in case I didn't vote before. Might have forgotten that. Okay, and also just to call, I don't see the number, but Board Member Price. Okay. Moving on, we have action item B, the resolution, a resolution in support of, oh, it just changed.
A resolution in support of, I was going to read the action item. Here we go, of prioritizing educators for receipt of vaccine for COVID-19 in preparation for expanded in-person learning. Appreciate that we're bringing this forward just to make clear the board's position on this. Any questions, comments from the board on this resolution? If not, is there a motion?
Madam President, this is Rudy. A motion for approval. Thank you.
I will second that. This is Sarah.
Thank you very much, Rudy. Thank you, Sarah. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? And I just want to appreciate those who wrote in public comment in support of this resolution as well. We had some folks doing that. Very much appreciate that. Okay.
Madam President,
yes.
Sorry. Just quickly to clarify that if the public in our community also would like to support this resolution that we are approving tonight, that they could do so in what ways? Could the public help facilitate this and advocate for teachers to get vaccinated if that was their wish to do so?
Do you want me to respond, Madam President, or do
Please,
you want...
Dr. Garcia.
So they could either copy the resolution that's on the website and send it off to the governor's office and to the Secretary of Health and say they support it, or they can just write a paragraph. They can also call the governor's office with that. They don't have to write. They can also call the Secretary for the Department of Health's office and say that they're a parent of students in the Santa Fe Public Schools and support the board's resolution to prioritize educators in the 1B. And when we say educators, we mean everyone who has close contact with students or who works in the public schools. And we're not asking them to be prioritized over 1A, who are those 75 and older, or those with pre-existing conditions. So they don't have to have the resolution. They can just call and let people know that they support that. They can email as well. Doesn't have to be a super fancy letter because they do keep track of those kinds of communication.
Thank you very much. I know that our community is feeling very passionate and motivated, and it's wonderful to have an action item that everyone can work towards so that we can get back to school as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for bringing that up, Secretary Bozay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board? We'll do a roll call vote. Vice President Garcia?
Yes.
Secretary Bozay?
Yes.
Dr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
And I do not believe we have board member press. I haven't seen the number at this stage. We just lost her. Anyway, the president also votes yes. Moving swiftly along, we are now on action item
C.
C. Okay, do we have the agenda back? Because I lost my other, there we go. And this is a resolution for African American Black History Month. And this follows our conversation at the last board meeting, where there seemed to be agreement among the board that, and we all thought that there was an existing resolution, but that if there wasn't, we should bring one forward. And I know there was a bunch of work done going back a number of years to find one, which was not located. So Dr. Garcia and the team put this together. I hope that we've all had a chance to review it. And I would just say I very much appreciate the language in there that recognizes African American Black History Month, and that it needs to be a year-round recognition and continual learning process, that that we are very explicit that it's not just about 1 month. So.
And Madam President, may I ask Alma just to show the resolution? We don't have to read it, but if people want to just see it, that they know it's just not the cover sheet. There is an actual resolution with whereases and what we intend to do. Just, I know that you've all read it, but I just want to make sure that people know it wasn't just a paragraph, that it's an actual resolution. Thank you, Alma.
Thank you very much. Any questions, discussions?
Madam President, this is Rudy. I don't know if Board Member Price is on the line or not, but I would just like to recognize her because she back in the late days, she actually helped out with the movement for this type of items many, many years ago. And I actually wish that she was on the line because as she brings it forward, and as we all know, because she has helped out many students in our district, and Board Member Price is, let's get a little bit of chills because she's one of our local individuals that has actually worked on this stuff and brought it forward. But I just wanted to bring that forward, and I don't know if she's on the other line, but I just want to put that for the record.
Yes. Thank you, Vice President Garcia. She does not appear to be here, but I agree with you and really appreciate this. Goes back a little ways now, even in a couple of years in my service on the board, but Board Member Price has schooled us all in how civil disobedience works and how nobody needs permission to participate in a movement and civil disobedience and protest and get attention, much of it drawn from her own personal experience advocating for lots of things, but civil rights chief among them. And we absolutely, I personally owe her a debt of gratitude and education, and in Santa Fe, we owe her so much, including just her service to the Santa Fe Public Schools.
And so also with that, also Madam President, just with that, when I went to Agua Fria School in the 3rd grade, 4th grade, there was an individual family. They were the Paysons, and they were African American family that were here, and so I understand this, but if there's, I just like to make a movement for approval with that if Mrs. Price is not around.
Thank you.
I will second that.
Thank you, Vice President Garcia and Secretary Bozé. And I also just want to thank Rashawn Ahmad and Nikisha Breeze, who of course joined us last week and have done a lot of work around a local African-American curriculum, which I understand in part due to the effort and support of Dr. Garcia and members of the team in the Santa Fe Public School District, is now actually that curriculum and what they developed, it's being sent out to all districts through the PED, through the Public Education Department, because of connections facilitated by this district and support provided here. So thank you, Dr. Garcia, and everybody involved. And certainly we owe a debt of gratitude to the folks from Santa Fe who've made that curriculum a reality, and it's now being shared statewide. Any further discussion? Okay, let's do a roll call vote. Vice President Garcia?
Yes, very well deserved. Yes, Madam President. Thank you.
Secretary Bozé?
Yes, absolutely.
Dr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Board Member Price? No. And the President votes yes. Thank you all very much. Now we've completed our action items. We are moving on to board discussion and possible action. Item A is parent town halls. Secretary Bozé.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Garcia. I just wanted to bring this up as a possible future action item, as I participated in a town hall that was hosted by the El Dorado PTA last week. And I think it's very helpful in this time of increased stress and uncertainty to have an opportunity both as parents and as district leaders to participate in discussions with our constituents, whether that's about things that aren't working or things that are working, or suggestions for how things could be done moving forward. It just seems like an important opportunity to continue the conversations ongoing so that we can support each other as we get through this. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Any thoughts, questions, discussion from the board?
Madam President, this is Reed. Just really quick, I think Secretary Bose brings up a very good point, and just communication throughout the communities is very important, because now that we're not working, we're not doing this and that. But I think this is great, and whatever support she needs from myself, as we do for the county commission, just communicate and let the community know what's happening out there, because government is for the community, and that's what we need to do. Very great. Thank you for bringing that up.
Dr. Garcia, any thoughts, comments you'd like to share?
Well, we certainly are open to do that. I really enjoyed participating in the one that I participated with Vice President Bose. We have 30 some sites. I don't know that we could do a town hall at each one of the schools, but we certainly can do more regional ones. We have had town halls. We've invited parents district-wide. They haven't been, they have been attended, but not greatly attended. And I don't know if it goes back to what Ms. Bose said, is that people prefer more localized interaction versus perhaps communicating as a district. But we will bring this up at any point when a PTA would like to have that. We will do our best to accommodate it, accommodate the request. It could be that if we get multiple requests, perhaps we can look at combining, maybe 3 or 4 schools, make it more personal. As much as I would love to do 30 town halls, I don't know that it's feasible. Wouldn't be timely. In other words, by the time I got through them all, they'd be on to another topic. But we will do our best to do that and accommodate requests as they come up.
Thank you. And I also think that I want to say that I think it's particularly or as important for schools that might not have very active PTAs. We really want to have a full picture of what's going on in our community. And I'm not sure that we even get that during public forum right now. And before the pandemic, we had this vision of, really having those discussions and meeting people where they are. And I feel concerned that that's needed as much as ever, if not more. And so I think that's a lot of where this idea came from, is how do we get that feedback from the people, the one public comment tonight about this family that sounds like they're really, really struggling. And so if we're hearing those, then we can connect them with the resources. And I don't want people to get lost out there. And there are, whether there's resources in the community or just advice that we can give that we've picked up, so that people don't feel like they're alone and struggling. And so that's where I'm coming from. Thank you.
And I would agree and think it's something that feels very worthwhile now. I don't know how we do the outreach. And even if, what jumped to my mind was one for each district, because then there are just 5 of us or something like that. But I think, and even something district-wide, I think it would be really wonderful to do something. And I appreciate that Dr. Gonzalez brought this forward early in the remote learning, that, school board meetings are pretty tough way to get public comment, and that it's like the flipped classroom almost. Town halls are flipped way for us to engage the public that is less about the business that the district needs to do, that the board needs to weigh in on, and more about the families and the questions that they have. So, and I know, you know, February 22nd is coming up very fast, but I think it would be wonderful, and just want to say I'm happy to participate in whatever way is useful, whether it's connecting with PTAs or, you know, sharing things on social media or emailing individual teachers, which now that I figured out how to do it, it's a powerful tool. Just to say thank you every so often or something, because anyway, it would be great to provide some sort of forum for those in-person questions and that sort of thing, and answers in real time. Okay, I know we're all tired. It's been a long meeting. Anything further on this?
Madam President, just real quick, I know we're all tired, but just real quick, maybe if Dr. Garcia could actually give us an update at the next meeting in regards to what's happening at the session. Unless there's session, maybe we can have our lobbyists just give us what's going on, what's happening, because I see stuff on the news media as into just a little cheat sheet, whatever. But that's it, if possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anything further on the parent town hall item? And I have an item also on board discussion and possible action, which, and again, I'm just recognizing we're all probably incredibly exhausted right now, but recognizing the other learning for students, technology or life skills grade. And we can bring this back. That might be a better way to do it. Dr. Garcia sort of alluded to what I'm thinking about here, just for the benefit of my fellow board members. But I really do, and I want to credit Grace Mayer, our NEA president, who mentioned this to me, and I've been thinking about it a lot. And realizing just how much our students have gained in terms of technology skills. Many of them have learned life skills in being at home, whether it's cooking or cleaning or, you know, regulating emotions around working parents or supporting emotional working parents, you name it. There are almost an infinite number of life skills that have been learned. And I know that many of the folks in the district are thinking about this, but I want us discussing it publicly at the board level, just to know that, and maybe even recognize that some of what kids have learned this year don't fit into the traditional buckets of grading that we have. And I know Ms. Romero and Mr. Chavez have been working on the whole grading thing. I've started hearing as I think the third quarter grades have been coming in, frustration from families that, and I know that it's been communicated from the district level. I'm not sure we can do enough to be clear with teachers that there needs to be some flexibility and creativity perhaps in grading, because kids are struggling. And when I'm hearing about negative reinforcement, when kids are getting bad grades and, you know, I'm not incredibly articulate right now, but not doing well, and realizing how much this can set up a chain reaction. I've heard it from my own contemporaries who said, you know, I had a tough teacher, which means not good in these contexts, who gave me bad grades, told me I was a bad student very early on, and then I just never believed in myself again. And, you know, I've been hearing horror stories right now about what's going on. So what I think I'll suggest is that we bring this back at a time when we haven't been meeting for almost 4 hours, maybe to discuss this, but that's the intention there, is that we figure out ways to recognize the other learning, get grades out of the traditional buckets, appreciate, and I think we should appreciate it. You know, we heard about the teachers and what they're doing. Parents and families have of course adapted a lot, but this is specifically about students, what they've learned, what they've gained, and how we can formally recognize that and try and create some positive reinforcement and positive cycles, because it's been a tough year, but it's not a lost year. Okay, anybody feel the need to weigh in? We'll bring this one back and talk about it more at another time.
I love the idea and I can't wait to talk about it more.
Good stuff. Thank you. Okay, advanced planning. We have an audit committee meeting on Thursday. Dr. Garcia, any changes needed?
Well, I'm looking at mine and I may have the draft that might have been done before we had to reschedule the meeting. And mine had citizens review that I know was not going to take place on the 10th. Is it on yours?
It does not appear on the agenda I'm looking
Okay, so
at.
it got
and Here we
corrected.
go, almost sharing. Yes, it did get corrected. And
Okay.
the study session for this week has also been removed, which is
Correct.
correct.
Yeah, I had the version before Monday and I was going to take them off. And then after we had to re-advertise, we fixed it. So I wasn't sure. Thank you, Madam President.
Okay, so we've got audit committee this week, and then tentatively an executive session and a regular board meeting scheduled for next Thursday. So a
And
little
the
over.
executive is tentative at this point. When you and I work on the agenda Thursday or Friday, I'll know if we'll need it or not.
All right. Good stuff. Any other questions, comments on events planning? Okay, then we've been at it quite long enough tonight. Thank you all very much for your patience and perseverance, and we are adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
See you later, everybody.
Thank you, Steph.
Good night, everyone.
Everybody.
Good
Be well.
night.
Cheers.